My twin brother called me crying, hiding in a closet like a frightened child, when I found out his wife had been controlling him, starving him, and breaking his spirit for 30 years. I did not call the police. I did not call a lawyer. Instead, I drove 800 miles, took his place, and became him. I walked into his house wearing his face but carrying my rage, and I taught that woman and her parasitic family a lesson that will haunt them for the rest of their miserable lives. My name is Duke Robinson. I am 68 years old, and unlike my twin brother Dustin, I have never let anyone walk over me. I spent 40 years as a military contractor building infrastructure in places where the government tells you not to go. I retired to Chicago with a significant fortune that I keep very quiet, living a life of peace fishing on Lake Michigan and enjoying the silence. Dustin, however, stayed in Atlanta. He was always the soft one, the one with the heart of gold, the mechanic who would fix a stranger's car for free just because they looked down on their luck. We look exactly alike, identical down to the gray in our beards, but our lives could not be more different. It was a Tuesday afternoon, and the Chicago sky was that perfect shade of steel gray. I was cleaning my gear for a fishing trip, wiping down a reel, when my phone buzzed on the mahogany table. It was a video call from Dustin. That alone was strange. Dustin never video called. He barely knew how to work his smartphone, a cheap device his wife Glenda allowed him to have only so she could track him. I swiped the screen to answer, expecting to see his goofy grin or maybe a shot of an engine he was working on. Instead, I saw darkness. Then a sliver of light cut across the screen as the phone moved. I saw an eye, bruised, swollen shut. Then I saw lips cracked and bleeding. "Duke," he whispered, the sound barely audible over the static. "Duke, I cannot do this anymore." I sat up straight, the fishing reel clattering to the floor. "Dustin, where are you? What is happening?" "I am in the closet," he choked out. "Glenda. She is making me sign the papers tomorrow. She is selling the house. She said if I do not sign, she will put me in a state facility. She said I am useless." I could hear the terror in his voice, a vibration that rattled my own bones. "Duke, I found the pills. I think I am just going to go to sleep. I am so tired, Duke. I am so tired of being afraid." "No," I commanded, my voice dropping to that tone I used when everything was falling apart overseas. "Do not you dare, Dustin. Do not you touch those pills. You listen to me. You are a Robinson. We do not quit. They are outside, Duke. Blake is laughing. They are eating steak, and I have not eaten since yesterday morning. I am done." "Listen to me," I said, leaning into the phone, staring into his one good eye. "Get up, right now. Do not pack a bag. Do not take anything. Just walk out the back door. Can you do that? I do not have the keys to the truck." Glenda takes them. "Walk, Dustin. Run if you have to. Go to the old truck stop off Highway 85, the one where we used to get peach cobbler with Daddy. You know the one." He nodded, a tear cutting a track through the grime on his cheek. "I will be there in 11 hours, I told him. "You wait for me. Do not talk to anyone. Do not answer your phone. Just wait. I am coming to get you." I hung up before he could argue. My hands were not shaking. They never shake when there is a mission. I walked to my bedroom closet. I did not pack fishing gear. I pulled out a black duffel bag. Inside, I placed 2 changes of clothes. Not my tailored Italian suits, but rough work clothes I used for gardening. Flannel shirts, worn denim. I went to my wall safe. I spun the dial and the heavy door clicked open. I took out 2 stacks of $100 bills, 50,000 in total. I took my passport, and then I reached to the back and grabbed the Glock 19. I checked the chamber, slid it into the holster, and tucked it into the bag. This was not a family visit. This was a rescue operation. I drove my black Lincoln Navigator out of the garage and hit the interstate. I drove fast. The miles blurred into a long ribbon of asphalt and concrete, but my mind was focused on one thing. Glenda. I had never liked her. Even 30 years ago when they got married, I saw the way she looked at him. She did not look at him with love. She looked at him like he was a tool she could use. But I had moved away, chased the money, chased the contracts, and I let my brother drift. I thought he was happy. I thought the distance was just natural. I was a fool. I had left my other half in the hands of a butcher. Before I continue this story, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit like and subscribe if you have ever had to stand up for a sibling who could not stand up for themselves. It was 3 in the morning when I pulled into the truck stop on Highway 85. The neon sign buzzed and flickered, casting a sickly yellow light over the cracked pavement. I saw him sitting on a curb near the diesel pumps. My heart broke. He looked like a homeless man. His clothes were stained with grease and old food. His shoes were held together with duct tape. He was thin, too, thin, his skin hanging off his bones as if he was starving. He was shivering, hugging his knees to his chest. I pulled the Lincoln up right in front of him. He flinched, shielding his face as if he expected to be hit. I jumped out and grabbed him. "Dustin," I said. "It is me. It is Duke." He looked up, and for a second it was like looking in a funhouse mirror. He was me, but broken. He collapsed into my arms, sobbing like a child. He smelled of stale sweat and fear. I held him tight, feeling the sharp protrusion of his ribs through his thin shirt. We sat in the car. I turned up the heat and handed him a thermos of coffee and a sandwich I had bought at a gas station. He ate it like a wolf, swallowing huge chunks without chewing. "Slow down," I said gently. "You are going to get sick." "Duke." "She is going to kill me," he mumbled, crumbs falling on his lap. "Or Blake will. That white boy she married our Ebony off to. He is evil, Duke. He smiles while he hurts you." I listened. I listened as he told me about the last 5 years. How Glenda took control of his pension. How they moved Blake and Ebony into the house. How Blake started calling him by his first name, then old man, then worse. How they made him sleep in the basement because his coughing annoyed them. How they put a lock on the refrigerator. My blood turned to ice. This was not just a bad marriage. This was torture. "We are going to fix this," I said. "How?" He looked at me with hopeless eyes. "They have the papers. The lawyer says I am incompetent." I reached into my bag and pulled out the clothes I had brought. "Put these on." He looked confused but obeyed. While he changed in the back seat, I took out a portable shaving kit. I looked in the rearview mirror. My beard was neatly trimmed, a sharp goatee. Dustin's was wild and unkempt. "I need you to shave," I said. "Clean it up. Make it look like mine." "Why?" "Because you are going on a vacation, Dustin." I handed him a Black American Express card and the keys to the Lincoln. "I booked you a suite at the Ritz-Carlton in Buckhead under my name. You are going to go there. You are going to order room service. You are going to get a massage. You are going to sleep in a bed with sheets that cost more than Glenda's soul." He stared at the keys. "But what about you?" I looked at my reflection again. Then I took the razor and did something I had not done in 20 years. I shaved off my goatee. I roughed up my hair. I took off my cashmere sweater and put on the greasy, stained flannel shirt Dustin had just taken off. I put on his taped-up shoes. "I am going to Atlanta," I said. "I am going back to your house. No Duke." He grabbed my arm. "They will hurt you. You do not know them. They do not know me." I replied, my voice hard. "They think they are dealing with Dustin Robinson, the man they broke. They are about to meet Duke Robinson. And I promise you, brother, they are going to regret the day they were born." It took an hour to convince him, but eventually he drove away, in my Lincoln tears streaming down his face, headed for safety. I stood in the parking lot of the truck stop, feeling the cold wind cut through the thin fabric of his shirt. I felt the holes in the shoes. I felt the shame he had carried every day. I got into his rusted, beat-up pickup truck. The engine coughed and sputtered before turning over. The cab smelled of mold. I gripped the steering wheel, my knuckles turning white. I drove the 40 minutes to his house. It was a modest brick ranch in a quiet suburb, the kind of place where people hide their secrets behind manicured lawns. I pulled into the driveway just as the sun was beginning to crest over the horizon. The house was dark. I walked to the back door just as Dustin had described. My key turned in the lock with a rusty scrape. I stepped into the kitchen. It smelled of stale grease and expensive perfume. The counters were cluttered with dirty dishes, empty wine bottles, and takeout containers. It was the mess of people who expected a servant to clean up after them. Suddenly, the hallway light flicked on. Glenda stood there. She was wearing a silk robe that looked brand new. Her hair was wrapped in a scarf. Her face was hard, the lines around her mouth etched deep with years of bitterness. She did not say hello. She did not ask where I had been all night. She did not ask if I was okay. She reached for a dirty, wet rag sitting on the counter and threw it. It slapped against my chest with a wet thud and fell to the floor. "Look who finally decided to come back," she hissed. "I thought you had finally done us a favor and walked into traffic." I stood there staring at her. My heart hammered against my ribs, not from fear, but from the effort it took not to cross the room and silence her. I forced my shoulders to slump. I lowered my head, mimicking the posture of my broken brother. Clean up this floor, Dustin, she spat. Blake spilled his wine last night and he is going to be awake in an hour. If he sees this sticky mess, he is going to be in a bad mood, and you know what happens when Blake is in a bad mood. She turned her back on me and walked to the refrigerator, grabbing a carton of orange juice. Do it now, you useless old fool, she threw over her shoulder. And do not expect breakfast. You lost your kitchen privileges when you disappeared last night. I looked down at the rag on the floor. I looked at the dirty linoleum. And then I looked at the back of the woman who had tormented my brother for 3 decades. I slowly bent down and picked up the rag. My fingers curled around the damp fabric. Yes, Glenda, I whispered, my voice rough. She did not even turn around. She did not notice that the voice was a little too deep, a little too steady. She did not notice that the man standing in her kitchen was not the man she had broken. She thought she was kicking a dog. She had no idea she had just let a wolf into her home. I started wiping the floor, my movements slow and deliberate. With every swipe of the rag, I made a mental list. Glenda, Ebony, Blake. They had taken everything from Dustin, his dignity, his money, his peace. I was going to take it all back, and I was going to enjoy every single second of it. I finished the spot on the floor and stood up. Glenda was sitting at the kitchen table, now scrolling through her phone, ignoring me completely. The floor is clean, I said. Good, she muttered without looking up. Now go down to the basement and stay there until I call you. We have company coming for lunch, and I do not want you embarrassing us with your smell. I walked toward the basement door. I opened it and stared down into the darkness. A mattress on the concrete floor. A single light bulb. It was a dungeon. I stepped down into the dark, closing the door behind me. I sat on the edge of the moldy mattress and felt for the lump in my pocket, the burner phone I had bought at the truck stop, and the small, high-definition camera I had pinned to the collar of the flannel shirt. I pressed the record button. The game had begun. I waited in the dark for an hour, listening to the house wake up above me. I heard heavy footsteps that had to be Blake. I heard the high-pitched, complaining voice of my niece, Ebony. Where is my coffee? Ebony whined. Mom, did you tell the old man to wash my car? I need to go to the mall. He is in the basement, Glenda replied. He can wash it later. Let him rot down there for a bit. I clenched my fists in the darkness. My brother had sold his own truck 5 years ago to pay for Ebony's college tuition. He had walked to work for 3 years so she could have a future. And this was how she spoke of him. I stood up and paced the small cell. I needed to see the enemy face to face. I needed to know exactly what I was dealing with. The door at the top of the stairs opened. Light flooded down, blinding me for a second. Hey, old man, a voice boomed. It was a voice dripping with arrogance. I squinted up the stairs. A young white man stood there shirtless, holding a mug of coffee. He had the soft body of someone who had never done a day of hard labor in his life, but he carried himself like he owned the world. Blake. Get your ass up here, Blake shouted. The toilet in the master bathroom is running again. Fix it! I walked up the stairs, keeping my head down, adopting the shuffle of a beaten man. As I reached the top, Blake didn't move out of the way. He stood in the doorway, forcing me to squeeze past him. He stuck out his foot. I saw it coming. A petty, childish trip. In my past life, I would have broken his knee before his foot touched my shin. But I had to be Dustin. I let my foot catch on his ankle. I stumbled, crashing into the door frame, my shoulder hitting the wood hard. Blake laughed, a cruel, barking sound. Watch your step, Dustin, he sneered, taking a sip of his coffee. You are getting clumsy in your old age. Do not make us put you in a home sooner than we planned. I gripped the doorframe to steady myself. I looked up at him just for a second. I let him see my eyes. Sorry, Blake, I muttered. He frowned just for a moment, as if he saw something in my gaze that didn't belong there, something dangerous. But then he shook his head, dismissing it. To him, I was just a piece of furniture that had learned to talk. Just fix the toilet, he said, turning away, and do not use the good towels. I watched him walk into the living room and flop onto the leather sofa, my brother's leather sofa. He put his feet up on the coffee table. I walked down the hall toward the bathroom. I passed the master bedroom. The door was open. I saw Glenda sitting at the vanity, applying expensive cream to her face. I walked into the bathroom. The toilet was indeed running. A simple flapper valve issue. I fixed it in 10 seconds. Then I looked in the mirror. I saw my brother's face staring back at me. I saw the bruises around the eye. I saw the split lip. I touched the glass. I promise you, Dustin, I whispered. By the time I am done, they will wish the toilet was the only thing that was broken in this house. I walked back out to the kitchen. Glenda, Blake, and Ebony were sitting at the table now. They were eating pancakes, eggs, and bacon. The smell was intoxicating. My stomach rumbled. There was no plate set for me. I stood by the counter waiting. "What are you standing there for?" Ebony asked, her mouth full of food. "You're creeping me out." "I am hungry," I said. Glenda pointed to a small bowl on the floor near the back door. It was a dog bowl, but they didn't have a dog. "There are some leftovers from last night in there," she said, not even looking at me. "Eat that, and then get out in the yard. The grass needs cutting." I looked at the bowl. There was a cold, half-eaten piece of chicken bone and some soggy rice in it. I felt a cold rage settle in my chest, heavy and solid. This was not just abuse, this was dehumanization. They were trying to erase him. I walked over to the bowl. I picked it up. Blake snickered. "Look at him, he is actually going to eat it. Good boy, Dustin." I held the bowl in my hand. It was ceramic, heavy. I turned to look at them. The three of them sitting there fat and happy, living off the sweat and blood of a man who was too good for this world. I walked toward the table. "What are you doing?" Glenda asked, her fork pausing halfway to her mouth. I stopped right next to Blake. I looked down at his plate. He had a large, juicy steak and eggs. He hadn't even touched the steak yet. "I am hungry," I repeated. And then I dropped the dog bowl. It shattered on the tile floor with a sound like a gunshot. The room went silent. Before Blake could react, I reached down, grabbed his steak with my bare hand, and picked it up. "Hey!" Blake shouted, jumping up. "Are you crazy?" I took a huge bite of the steak juice running down my chin. I chewed slowly, staring Blake right in the eyes. Glenda stood up, her face turning purple. "Spit that out! How dare you!" I swallowed the meat. It was delicious. I looked at Glenda. Then I looked at Blake, who was clenching his fists, his face red with shock and anger. I smiled. It was not a nice smile. "The meat is a little tough," I said, my voice dropping an octave, losing the tremor I had faked earlier. "Just like you, Blake." Blake lunged at me. He pulled back his fist to strike me. I did not flinch. I did not cower. I stood my ground, tightened my core, and waited. Hit me, I thought. Please hit me. Give me a reason. Blake's fist stopped inches from my face. He saw something. He saw that I wasn't flinching. He saw that my hands weren't up to protect my face, but were loose at my sides, ready. He hesitated. The bully's instinct. He sensed a predator. He lowered his hand, stepping back, confused. You're lucky I don't beat you, senseless old man," he stammered, his voice shaking slightly. I took another bite of the steak. "Try it," I said. The silence in the kitchen was deafening. Glenda looked at me, then at Blake, her eyes wide. Ebony had stopped chewing. I turned around, walked to the back door, and stepped out into the sunlight, finishing the steak as I went. I had fired the first shot, and they didn't even know the war had started. I spent the rest of the afternoon in the backyard hacking away at the overgrown brush with a dull machete I found in the shed. The physical labor felt good. It reminded me of my days in the field, clearing landing zones in dense jungles where the heat was thick enough to choke you. But the heat in Atlanta was different. It was heavy with humidity and the suffocating weight of my brother's misery. Every swing of the blade was a release of the anger building inside me. I was not just cutting vines, I was visualizing the dismantling of the prison they had built around Dustin. By the time the sun began to dip below the tree line, casting long shadows across the neglected lawn, I had cleared a significant patch of land. I wiped the sweat from my brow with the back of my forearm and looked at the house. The kitchen windows glowed with warm yellow light. It looked like a home from the outside. Inside, it was a viper pit. I entered through the back door, washing my hands at the utility sink in the mudroom. The water was cold and rusted, but it washed away the dirt. I walked into the kitchen. Glenda was there, stirring a pot on the stove. The smell of roasted garlic and rosemary filled the air. It smelled delicious. It smelled like a lie. She turned when she heard my boots on the linoleum. Her face twisted into a sneer the moment she saw me. "You are tracking mud everywhere," she snapped, pointing a wooden spoon at my feet. "I just mopped this floor." I looked down. My boots were clean. I had scraped them outside. There was no mud. It was just another power play. Another way to make Dustin feel small. "Clean it up," she ordered, pointing to a dry rag sitting on the counter. "On your knees." I want to see my reflection in those tiles before Blake gets home. I stared at her for a moment, calculating. The old Duke would have laughed in her face. But I was under cover. I was deep behind enemy lines. I had to maintain the cover a little longer. I grabbed the rag and slowly lowered myself to one knee. I began to wipe the spotless floor, my movement slow and exaggerated. Suddenly, the front door slammed open. Heavy footsteps echoed down the hallway. Blake walked into the kitchen. He was wearing a cheap suit that was too tight across the shoulders, likely bought with my brother's stolen money to make himself look important at a job I suspected he did not even have. He looked agitated, his face flushed with the kind of artificial stress lazy men invent to justify their bad moods. He stopped when he saw me on the floor. A cruel grin spread across his face. "Look at that," he chuckled, tossing his keys onto the granite island. "The king of the castle on his knees where he belongs." I continued to wipe the imaginary spot on the floor, keeping my head down, but my eyes were locked on his shiny leather shoes. He walked toward the refrigerator, stepping unnecessarily close to me. As he passed, he pulled his foot back and kicked the rag out from under my hand. It slid across the room and landed under the cabinets. "Oops," he said, his voice dripping with mock apology. "Clumsy me. Go get it, Dustin." I stayed still for a second, breathing in through my nose. I reached out to grab the edge of the rag that was still within reach. As my fingers brushed the fabric, Blake brought his heel down. He stomped hard right on the back of my hand. Pain shot up my arm, sharp and immediate. I gritted my teeth, swallowing the grunt of pain that tried to escape my throat. He did not lift his foot. He ground his heel down, twisting it into my skin, crushing my knuckles against the hard tile. "Careful there, old-timer," he whispered, leaning down so his face was inches from mine. "You do not want to break a hip or a finger. You know how expensive medical bills are these days. We cannot afford to waste money on fixing your broken parts. Not when Ebony needs a new wardrobe." I looked up at him. I did not pull my hand away. I did not beg. I just looked at him. I memorized the pores on his nose. I memorized the smell of stale tobacco on his breath. I memorized the way his eyes dilated with the pleasure of inflicting pain. "Get off my hand, Blake," I said. My voice was low, steady. He blinked, surprised by the lack of fear in my tone. He lifted his foot, laughing nervously as he stepped back. "Just teaching you a lesson, old man. Know your place." He walked over to the fridge, grabbing a beer and popping the cap. Glenda laughed softly from the stove, a sound like dry leaves scraping on concrete. "Dinner is ready," she announced. "Go wash up, Blake." I stood up, flexing my throbbing hand. My knuckles were red and starting to swell, but nothing was broken. I had suffered worse. Much worse. I walked to the sink and ran cold water over my hand. "Sit down, Dustin," Glenda commanded, pointing to the small rickety table in the corner of the kitchen. Not the big dining table. That was for the family. This was the kid table, the servant table. I sat down. The wood of the chair groaned under my weight. Ebony walked in then. She was 30 years old, but she still carried herself like a petulant teenager. She was glued to her phone, her thumbs flying across the screen. She didn't even look up as she sat at the main table. "Is the food ready?" she asked without greeting anyone. "I am starving. Shopping is exhausting." Glenda began to serve the plates. For Blake, she placed a massive, sizzling T-bone steak perfectly seared. For Ebony, a slightly smaller steak with a mountain of buttery mashed potatoes. For herself, a filet mignon. Then she came to me. She dropped a plate in front of me with a clatter. On it sat 2 cold, shriveled chicken wings that looked like they had been salvaged from a dumpster and a spoonful of gray, mushy peas. "Eat up," she said, dismissing me. "We are clearing out the leftovers." I looked at the sad plate. Then I looked at the feast on the main table. The steam rising from the steaks carried the scent of charcoal and butter. They dug in, cutting large pieces of meat, laughing, talking about their day. "This steak is perfect," Mom Blake said with his mouth full. "You really outdid yourself." Ebony ignored her food for a moment, turning her attention to me. She looked at me with an expression of pure annoyance, as if my mere existence was an inconvenience to her digestion. "Dad, did you sign those papers yet?" she asked, pointing her fork at me. "What papers?" I asked, my voice flat. "The power of attorney papers." She huffed, rolling her eyes. "The dealership called me today. They have that white Range Rover I want, but they cannot hold it past Monday. I need the down payment." "You have a car," I said. "A perfectly good car that Dustin had bought her 2 years ago." "It is 2 years old, Dad," she groaned. It is embarrassing. Everyone at the yoga studio has the new model. I look like a pauper. Do you want me to look like a failure? I looked at her. My brother's daughter. He had bounced her on his knee. He had taught her to ride a bike. He had sacrificed his own comfort to give her everything she asked for. And this was the result. A parasite who viewed her father as nothing more than a broken ATM that needed to be smashed until it dispensed cash. I need that money. Ebony continued, her voice rising to a whine. Just sign the stupid papers. You are not using the money anyway. You just sit around here all day doing nothing. She turned back to her steak, slicing into it with entitlement. I looked down at my cold chicken wings. I felt the hunger gnawing at my stomach, but more than hunger, I felt the injustice burning in my gut like a coal. I stood up. The chair scraped loudly against the floor. The sound cut through their chatter. They all stopped eating and looked at me. "Where are you going?" Glenda asked sharply. "You are not done with your food. Sit down." I ignored her. I walked slowly toward the main table. My steps were heavy, deliberate. I walked straight up to Blake. He looked up at me, a piece of steak halfway to his mouth. "What do you want, old man?" he asked. I did not say a word. I reached out and took the fork from his hand. He was too stunned to resist. I placed the fork on the table. Then I reached down and picked up his plate. The steak was huge, juicy pink in the center. The potatoes were steaming. "Hey," Blake shouted, starting to rise. "That is my dinner." I looked at him. I did not blink. I did not flinch. "Sit down," I said. It was not a request. It was an order. The kind of order you give to a soldier who is about to make a fatal mistake. The kind of order that brooks no argument. Blake froze. He was half out of his chair, his face red with anger, but his legs stopped working. He saw something in my face. He saw the Duke Robinson who had stared down warlords. He saw the man who had survived things that would make him wet his pants. He sat down slowly, confused by his own fear. I took the plate. I walked back to my small, rickety table. I swept the plate of cold chicken wings onto the floor with the back of my hand. The ceramic shattered. The peas splattered across the linoleum. Glenda screamed. "Have you lost your mind? Look at this mess." I sat down. I placed Blake's steak in front of me. I picked up my knife and fork. I cut a large piece of the meat. I put it in my mouth. I chewed slowly, savoring the flavor, savoring the silence that had fallen over the room. It was the best steak I had ever tasted. You cannot do that," Ebony stammered, looking from me to Blake. "Mom, do something. He is crazy." Glenda was shaking. Her face was a mask of fury. "You are going to pay for those plates, Dustin. You are going to pay for every single thing you break. Get out of my kitchen. Get out right now." I swallowed. I took another bite. I did not look at her. I continued to eat, methodically dismantling the steak piece by piece. Blake stood up again. His shock was wearing off, replaced by the humiliation of having his food taken by an old man. He grabbed the steak knife from beside his empty placemat. His knuckles were white. "Give me back my plate," he growled, stepping toward me. "Right now, or I swear to God I will make you regret it." I stopped chewing. I placed my fork down gently. I turned in my chair to face him. I still held the steak knife in my right hand. It was a heavy, serrated blade with a wooden handle. I looked at the knife in his hand, then I looked at his eyes. I stood up. I did not rush. I unfolded my frame to my full height. I am 6'2", but I usually slouch to blend in. Now I stood straight. I seemed to grow in the room, casting a shadow over the table. I gripped my knife not like a diner, but like a weapon, thumb along the spine blade ready. I took one step toward him. Blake flinched. He took a step back, bumping into the table and rattling the glasses. "You want to use that knife, boy?" I asked softly. My voice was a low rumble like distant thunder. He swallowed hard, his Adam's apple bobbing in his throat. He looked at the knife in my hand, then at the cold, dead look in my eyes. He realized in that second that he was holding a piece of silverware, and I was holding an extension of my will. He realized that if he lunged, I would not just defend myself, I would end him. Fear primal and undeniable flooded his eyes. He lowered the knife, his hand shaking. You are crazy," he whispered. I stepped closer, invading his personal space, forcing him to look up at me. "The meat is a little tough," I said casually, as if we were discussing the weather. "But I have strong teeth." I held his gaze for 3 seconds. 1, 2, 3. Long enough to let him know I owned him. Long enough to let him know the hierarchy of this house had just shifted. I turned my back on him. A calculated risk. A show of ultimate disrespect. I walked out of the kitchen, leaving the half-eaten steak on the table. I heard Glenda gasping for air. I heard Ebony whimpering. But I did not hear Blake move. He was frozen, rooted to the spot by the terror of the unknown. I walked down the hallway toward the basement door. I opened it and stepped into the darkness. This was just the first skirmish. The battle lines were drawn, and for the first time in 30 years, the Robinson house had a man in it who was ready for war. The heavy wooden door at the top of the stairs slammed shut, and the deadbolt slid home with a final metallic clack that echoed in the darkness. Glenda did not just send me to my room, she banished me to a dungeon. I stood on the bottom step, listening to her footsteps retreat down the hallway. I turned and looked at the space my brother had called home for 5 years. It was an unfinished basement with concrete walls that sweated moisture and a floor that was cold enough to numb your toes through your shoes. In the corner near the noisy furnace lay a twin mattress directly on the cement. It was stained yellow and brown, covered with a single thin blanket that smelled of mildew and dog hair. There were no pillows, just a bundled-up old coat. I walked over to the mattress and nudged it with my boot. A cockroach scurried out from underneath and disappeared into a crack in the wall. My chest tightened. This was not a guest room. This was not even a servant's quarters. This was a kennel. This was where you put an animal you wanted to forget about. I looked at the small plastic bucket in the corner. I realized with a jolt of nausea that this was his bathroom at night because they locked the door at the top of the stairs. Rage is a cold thing for me. It does not burn hot. It freezes. It sharpens. I sat on the edge of that filthy mattress and let the cold settle into my bones. I thought about Dustin curling up here night after night, listening to them laugh upstairs, listening to the television while he shivered in the dark. I thought about him staring at these gray walls, wondering what he had done to deserve this. He had done nothing but love them. That was his crime. And this was his punishment. I waited. I possess the patience of a sniper. I sat in the dark for hours, listening to the rhythms of the house. I heard the television blare and then go silent. I heard the shower run. I heard the toilet flush. I heard the heavy thud of Blake walking around in his boots, probably pacing and thinking about the fear he had felt in the kitchen. Eventually the house went quiet. The only sound was the hum of the refrigerator upstairs and the rhythmic clicking of the furnace next to me. It was 2 a.m, time to go to work. I stood up and walked to the top of the stairs. The door was a solid core wood door with a standard deadbolt. To a civilian, it was a wall. To me, it was a minor inconvenience. I reached into the hem of the flannel shirt. I had sewn a small set of lock picks into the fabric before I left Chicago. I pulled out a tension wrench and a rake. I knelt by the keyhole. I worked by feel. The lock was old and the pins were loose. I applied a hair of tension and raked the pins. Click, click. The cylinder turned. I slid the bolt back slowly, timing the movement to cover the sound. I opened the door a crack. The hallway was dark. I slipped out, closing the door behind me but leaving it unlocked. I moved through the house like smoke. The floorboards were old and creaky, but I knew how to walk on the edges where the wood was supported by the joists. I made no sound. I passed Ebony's room. She was snoring lightly. I passed the master bedroom. Glenda and Blake were in there. Wait, why was Blake in the master bedroom? I pressed my ear to the door. I heard the deep rumble of Blake's snore and the lighter breathing of Glenda. My stomach turned. So that was how it was. The son-in-law and the mother-in-law. The depravity of this house knew no bottom. I moved to the small room at the end of the hall. It used to be Dustin's study. Now it was Glenda's office. The door was locked. This one was a cheap privacy lock. I popped it in 3 seconds. I slipped inside and closed the door. I pulled a small pen light from my pocket and clamped it in my teeth. The beam cut a small circle of light on the desk. It was a mess. Papers were stacked everywhere. Unopened bills, flyers, fast food receipts. I started digging. I was looking for the money. You always follow the money. I found a leather-bound ledger in the bottom drawer. Glenda was disorganized in her life, but she was meticulous in her greed. She had recorded every penny. I opened it to the current month. Dustin's pension deposit, $3,500. I ran my finger down the expense column. Nails and spa for Ebony, $400. Liquor store, $300. Crypto investment, Blake, $2,000. I flipped back a few pages. It was the same every month. Blake was bleeding the accounts dry gambling on digital coins he did not understand. He had lost $40,000 in the last 6 months alone, and Glenda was letting him do it. She was financing his stupidity with the sweat of my brother's 40 years of labor. I saw an entry near the bottom. Allowance for Dustin, $20 a month. They were taking thousands and giving him enough for a pack of gum and a soda. I felt a vibration in the floorboards. Footsteps. I froze. I clicked off the light. Someone was walking down the hall. The steps were heavy but soft. Bare feet. They stopped right outside the office door. I held my breath. I did not move a muscle. My hand drifted to the letter opener on the desk. It was dull, but it would go through an eye socket if I pushed hard enough. The doorknob rattled. Locked. I had locked it from the inside when I entered. I heard a grunt, then the sound of a zipper. The bathroom door across the hall opened. It was Blake. He was just going to the bathroom. I waited. I heard the flush. I heard the water run for a second. Then the footsteps returned to the master bedroom. The door closed. I let out a breath I had been holding for 2 minutes. Close. Too close. I turned the light back on. I needed to finish this. I dug deeper into the bottom drawer. Under a stack of old magazines, I found a manila envelope taped to the underside of the drawer. It was hidden well. I ripped it open. Inside was a single document, a life insurance policy. I scanned it. It was new. Dated only 3 months ago. It insured the life of Dustin Robinson for $500,000. The premium was high because of his age, but it was paid up for the year. I looked at the beneficiary line. It was not Glenda. It was not Ebony. It was Blake. I stared at the name. Blake Thomas. Listed as son-in-law. Why would Glenda agree to this? Unless she did not know, or unless Blake had something on her, or unless they were planning to split it and run. This was not just theft anymore. This was a death warrant, a $500,000 bounty on my brother's head. And with Blake's gambling debts piling up, that policy was looking more and more like a solution to all his problems. I took photos of every page with my burner phone. I put the document back exactly how I found it. I retaped the envelope. I closed the drawer. I slipped out of the office and locked the door behind me. I ghosted back down the hall and down the stairs to the basement. I locked the deadbolt from the inside using the pick to turn the cylinder so it would look like I had never left. I went back down the wooden steps to the concrete floor. I sat on the mattress. My mind was racing. I had the motive. Now I needed to watch for the method. I laid back on the mattress trying to get comfortable. The air was heavy and stagnant. Then I smelled it. It was faint at first. A sweet, rotten egg smell. Mercaptan. The additive they put in natural gas so you know when there is a leak. I sat up. The smell was getting stronger. I looked at the furnace in the corner. It was an old unit, a rusted beast from the 80s. I got up and walked over to it. I shone my penlight on the gas line. The yellow handle of the shut-off valve was turned parallel to the pipe in the open position. That was normal, but the smell was coming from the connection below the valve where the flex line met the hard pipe. I leaned in close. I could hear a faint hiss. I reached out and touched the nut connecting the line. It was loose. Not just vibrate loose. It was finger loose. I could turn it with my thumb. I looked at the pipe. There were fresh scratch marks on the brass nut. Marks made by a wrench. Someone had loosened this. Recently. I looked up at the ceiling at the floorboards of the kitchen above. They were not waiting for nature to take its course. They were not waiting for a heart attack. They were trying to kill me tonight. A gas leak in a closed basement with a sleeping man. I would never wake up. Or worse, a spark from the furnace igniter would turn this basement into a bomb and blow the whole house off its foundation. They would claim it was an accident, old furnace, faulty maintenance, poor Dustin. I tightened the nut with my hand, then grabbed a pair of pliers from a nearby shelf and cranked it down hard until the hissing stopped. I stood there in the dark, breathing in the lingering scent of the gas. They had crossed the line. They had moved from abuse to attempted murder. I walked back to the mattress. I reached into my bag and pulled out the Glock. I racked the slide chambering around. I placed it under the bundled coat they gave me for a pillow. I did not sleep. I lay there in the dark, eyes open, staring at the top of the stairs. You made a mistake, Blake. You tried to gas a man who has cleared tunnels in the desert. You tried to kill the wrong brother. Tomorrow I was not just going to be passive-aggressive. Tomorrow I was going to war, and the first casualty was going to be their sense of safety. I woke up to the sound of heavy footsteps pacing the kitchen floorboards above my head. It was 6 in the morning. Blake was awake early, which was unusual for a man who usually slept until noon. I knew exactly why he was up. He was waiting for the boom. He was waiting for the sound of an explosion or the silence of a dead man. I stretched my arms, feeling the cold stiffness of the basement floor seep out of my bones. I checked the Glock under my pillow one last time before tucking it into the waistband of my trousers at the small of my back, hidden under the loose flannel shirt. I unlocked the deadbolt from the inside using my pick set just as easily as I had the night before. I walked up the stairs. My boots hit the wood with a heavy, deliberate rhythm. Thud, thud, thud. I opened the door to the kitchen. Blake was standing by the coffee maker, his hand shaking as he poured water into the reservoir. He jumped when the door opened, spinning around so fast he splashed water onto the counter. His face was pale, his eyes wide and bloodshot. He looked like he had seen a ghost. In a way, he had. He was looking at the man he thought he had murdered last night. "Good morning, Blake," I said. My voice was gravel and smoke. He stared at me, his mouth opening and closing like a fish on a hook. You are awake." I walked past him to the cabinet and grabbed a mug. I poured myself a cup of his coffee black. I took a sip, staring at him over the rim of the cup. "I slept like a baby," I said. "Although the air down there was a little heavy last night, smelled like rotten eggs." Blake swallowed hard, his Adam's apple bobbing nervously. "Is that right?" he stammered. "Old houses, you know. Drafty pipes." I took a step closer to him, invading his personal space. I smelled the fear on him. It smelled sour, like old sweat. "It was not the pipes, Blake," I said softly. "It was the flex line on the furnace. The nut was loose, almost like someone had taken a wrench to it." His eyes darted to the back door, then back to me. "That is crazy, old man. Why would anyone do that?" "I do not know," I said, shrugging. "Maybe they were trying to fix it and forgot to tighten it. People make mistakes when they play with tools they do not understand." I took another sip of coffee and let the silence stretch out. I watched him sweat. "But do not worry," I continued. "I fixed it. I tightened that nut down so hard it will never come loose again. I am good with tools, Blake. I know how things work mechanically." I paused, letting a small, cold smile touch my lips. "Since I was already in a fixing mood, I decided to go out to the driveway early this morning. I noticed your car was parked a little crooked, so I crawled underneath to check your brake lines." Blake froze. The color drained from his face completely, leaving him looking like a sheet of paper. "You touched my car," he whispered. "Just a safety check," I said casually. "You know these modern cars. Sometimes the brake fluid lines get brittle. Sometimes the bleeder valves get loose, just like gas lines. I gave everything a good tightening. Or maybe I loosened something. My memory is not what it used to be, right? That is what you and Glenda keep telling everyone, that I am getting forgetful." I took a step back, enjoying the terror in his eyes. "You might want to drive slow today, Blake. You never know when a pedal might go all the way to the floor." He dropped his coffee mug. It shattered on the floor, hot brown liquid splashing over his expensive slippers. He did not even notice. He was thinking about driving down the highway at 70 miles an hour and pressing the brake only to find nothing there. "You stay away from my car!" he shrieked, backing away from me. "You are crazy!" I laughed. A low, dry sound. "Drive safe, son-in-law." At that moment, Glenda walked into the kitchen, tying the belt of her silk robe. She looked at the shattered mug on the floor, then at Blake's terrified face, then at me, standing calm and collected with my coffee. "What is going on here?" she demanded. "Dustin, why is there a mess on my floor again?" "Ask Blake," I said. "He seems to have a case of the shakes. Maybe he has a guilty conscience." Glenda narrowed her eyes. She did not know about the gas line. Blake had kept that little initiative to himself. but she sensed the tension. She sensed that her whipping boy was not acting right. "I do not have time for this," she snapped. "Ebony needs shrimp for her salad tonight, and I need wine. We have guests coming this evening." She walked over to her purse and pulled out a blue plastic card, the EBT card, the state assistance card for food stamps. She threw it on the table. It slid across the surface and stopped in front of me. "Go to the store," she ordered. "Get 2 pounds of jumbo shrimp, 3 bottles of Chardonnay, and a carton of cigarettes for Blake. And do not take all day." I looked at the card. I knew for a fact there was less than $2 on it. I had seen the balance in her ledger last night. She knew it too. She was sending me to the store to stand in line to ring up expensive items and then to be humiliated when the card was declined. She wanted me to feel the shame of poverty while she sat here in her silk robe. She wanted to break me. Again. I picked up the card. "Sure, Glenda," I said. "Anything else?" She looked surprised by my obedience. "No. Just go. And walk. You are not taking the truck. It makes too much noise." I put the card in my pocket. I finished my coffee and placed the mug in the sink. I walked out the front door without a word. I walked down the driveway past Blake's car. I saw him watching me from the window, his face pressed against the glass. I stopped by his front tire and bent down as if inspecting the wheel well. He disappeared from the window instantly, probably running to find his keys to check his brakes. I walked down the street until I was out of sight. Then I stopped. I sat on a bench at the bus stop and took off my right boot. I pried up the false heel insert. Underneath, tucked into a hollowed-out space, was my Centurion card, the black titanium card that has no limit. I put my boot back on. I was not going to the discount grocery store. I was going to change the game. I called an Uber. When the black SUV pulled up, the driver looked skeptical at my ragged clothes, but I flashed a roll of cash and he let me in. "Take me to the Lenox Square Mall," I said. The driver looked at me in the rearview mirror. "That is a high-end place, buddy." "You sure? Just drive." We arrived at the mall. I walked past the food court, past the Gap, past the stores where normal people shopped. I walked straight into Neiman Marcus. The security guard followed me, his hand hovering near his radio. I ignored him. I walked into the men's formal wear section. A sales associate, a young man with a sneer on his face, approached me. "Sir, the restrooms are by the exit," he said, trying to shepherd me away. "I am not here for the restroom," I said. "I am here for a suit. That one." I pointed to a charcoal gray Tom Ford suit on the mannequin. Italian wool, hand-stitched. $4,000. The salesman laughed. "Sir, that suit costs more than your life. Please leave before I call security." I reached into my dirty flannel shirt pocket and pulled out the black card. I held it up. It caught the light. The salesman stopped laughing. His eyes went wide. He recognized the card. He knew that card meant I could buy the store if I wanted to. "I want the suit," I said. "I want a white silk shirt. I want a pair of black Oxfords, and I want to wear them out of the store. Can you handle that, or do I need to find someone who works on commission?" "Right away, sir," he stammered, his entire demeanor changing. "Right this way, sir. Would you like a glass of champagne while we measure you?" "Bring the bottle," I said. An hour later, I walked out of the store. The flannel shirt and dirty jeans were in a trash bag in my hand. I was wearing the suit. It fit like armor. The shoes clicked on the marble floor with authority. I caught my reflection in a shop window. Dustin was gone. Duke had arrived. I went to the wine shop next. I bought a case of vintage Bordeaux, not the cheap Chardonnay Glenda wanted. I bought a box of Cuban cigars. I bought a gold watch. Then I called a car service. I did not want an Uber. I wanted a statement. "I need a Lincoln Town Car," I told the dispatcher. "Black, tinted windows, and I need a driver who knows how to open a door." 30 minutes later, the long black car pulled up to the curb. The driver in a uniform and cap opened the rear door for me. I slid into the leather seat, tossing the trash bag of old clothes onto the floorboard. "Take me home," I said, giving him the address. We pulled onto my brother's street just after noon. The neighbors were out. Mrs. Higgins was watering her hydrangeas. Mr. Henderson was washing his car. The Lincoln glided down the street, silent and imposing. It slowed down and turned into Dustin's driveway. I saw the curtain in the living room twitch. Glenda was watching. The car stopped. The driver got out and walked around to my door. He opened it. I stepped out. The sun hit the charcoal suit and the gold watch on my wrist. I adjusted my cuffs. I stood tall, my back straight, my head held high. I looked like a senator. I looked like a king returning from exile. Mrs. Higgins dropped her garden hose. Mr. Henderson stopped scrubbing his car. The front door of the house flew open. Glenda came out. She was wearing day clothes now, but her mouth was hanging open. Ebony was right behind her holding her phone. Blake was peering over their shoulders, still looking pale. "Who is that?" Ebony asked. Is that Dad?" I walked toward them. I did not shuffle. I marched. I stopped at the bottom of the porch steps. Dustin, Glenda whispered. Her eyes scanned the suit, the shoes, the car. Where did you get this? Did you steal it? Did you steal? Is the police coming?" I laughed. It was a rich, deep sound. "No." "Glenda," I said, "I did not steal it." Then how Ebony shrieked. "That is a Lincoln. That suit costs thousands. You have $20 to your name." I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out the receipt for the suit. I crumpled it and tossed it on the ground. "I got lucky," I said. "Lucky?" Blake asked, stepping forward, his greed momentarily overcoming his fear. "What do you mean, lucky?" "I bought a scratch-off ticket at the gas station this morning," I lied smoothly. "With the last $5 I had, they all froze." The air in the yard seemed to get sucked away, replaced by a vacuum of pure avarice. I could see the gears turning in their heads. I could see the dollar signs flashing in their eyes. "How much?" Glenda asked, her voice trembling. "How much did you win, Dustin?" I smiled. I looked at the house, then at the car, then at them. "Enough," I said. "Enough to buy a new life." I signaled the driver. He opened the trunk and took out the case of wine. "Put it in the kitchen," I told him. I walked up the stairs past my stunned family. I patted Blake on the cheek. "Do not worry about the shrimp," I said. "We are eating steak tonight. Real steak." I walked into the house, leaving them standing in the driveway, staring at the black car like it was a chariot sent from heaven. The bait was taken. The hook was set. Now it was time to reel them in. The moment I stepped into the living room, the atmosphere shifted from shock to a predatory hunger that made my skin crawl. Ebony was the first to recover. She looked at my new suit, then at the heavy gold watch on my wrist, and finally at the bulge in my jacket pocket where I had stashed the rest of the cash. Her eyes did not show happiness for her father. They showed calculation. She walked up to me, her hand extended, palm up. "Give it to me," she demanded. I looked at her hand, then at her face. "Excuse me," I said. "The ticket or the money or whatever you have?" Ebony snapped, snapping her fingers. "Give it to me right now. You are old, Dad. You do not know how to handle that kind of money. You will just lose it or let someone scam you. I am the one with the business degree, remember. I know how to invest. I know how to make it grow." I almost laughed. This was the girl who had maxed out 3 credit cards on shoes and handbags. This was the girl who had dropped out of business school 2 semesters in because the morning classes were too early. "I am not giving you anything." "Ebony," I said, my voice calm. Her face twisted into a mask of ugly rage. "You owe me," she screamed. "You owe me for ruining my life. Do not think I forgot about graduation. You embarrassed me in front of everyone." The memory hit me hard because Dustin had cried about this to me years ago. He had sold his 1970 Ford F-100 pickup truck. It was the only thing of value. He owned a truck he had restored with his own grease-stained hands for 10 years. He sold it to pay her final tuition bill so she could walk across that stage. And when he showed up at the ceremony in his best work shirt because he could not afford a suit, she pretended not to know him. She told her friends he was the janitor. "I sold my truck for you," I said quietly. "I walked to work in the rain for 3 years for you." "That old piece of junk," she spat. "You should have sold a kidney." "You are selfish, Dad. You have always been selfish. And now you stumble into a fortune and you think you can just keep it. No, I am not letting you waste my inheritance." She lunged. It happened fast. She was young and entitled, and she had never been told no in her life. She reached for my inside jacket pocket, her fingernails digging into the fine Italian wool. She was trying to rob me in my own living room. "Give it to me," she shrieked, clawing at my chest. I did not strike her. I would never strike a woman, not even a viper like Ebony. But I did not let her rob me. I relied on muscle memory honed by decades of close-quarters combat training. As her hand grabbed my lapel, I brought my left arm up, knocking her grip loose. I stepped into her personal space using my hip to off-balance her. I swept my arm out in a firm, controlled motion, pushing her away from me. It was not a hit. It was a redirection of force. Ebony stumbled backward. Her heels caught on the edge of the rug. She flailed her arms trying to find purchase but found only air. She landed on the plush leather sofa with a soft thud. She was not hurt. She had fallen onto soft cushions, but her pride was shattered. She sat there for a second blinking in disbelief. Then she looked at me and I saw the idea form in her eyes. It was a malicious spark. She let out a scream that could have shattered glass. "He hit me!" she wailed, throwing herself back against the cushions and holding her face. "Oh my God, he hit me. My eye. I think he blinded me." Glenda, who had been watching from the kitchen doorway with greedy eyes, suddenly sprang into action. This was her moment. This was the excuse she needed to get me out of the house and keep the money she thought I had hidden. She ran to the phone on the wall. "I am calling the police," she yelled, her voice trembling with fake terror. "I knew you were violent. I knew you would snap one day. You are going to jail, Dustin, and I am going to take everything you have for pain and suffering." Blake was standing by the stairs recording everything on his phone, a smirk playing on his lips. "Say goodbye to the money, old man," he whispered. "Domestic abuse of an elderly man against his daughter. You are done." I stood in the center of the room adjusting my suit jacket. I did not run. I did not beg. I watched them perform their little play. Ebony was sobbing loudly now, though there were no tears. Glenda was screaming into the phone, giving the operator a terrifying description of a man who did not exist. "He is crazy," she shouted into the receiver. "He has a weapon. He just attacked my daughter. Please hurry before he kills us all." I walked over to the armchair and sat down. I crossed my legs. I waited. 10 minutes later, the sirens wailed down the street. Blue and red lights flashed through the front window, illuminating the faces of my betrayers. 2 officers burst through the front door, hands on their holsters. "Police hands where I can see them," one officer shouted. Ebony let out a fresh wail. "He is there," she pointed a shaking finger at me. "He threw me across the room. He punched me. Look at my face." The officers looked at me. They saw an older black man in an expensive suit sitting calmly in a chair. They looked at Ebony, who had no marks on her face. They looked at Glenda, who was hyperventilating on cue. "Sir, stand up slowly," the officer commanded. I stood up. I raised my hands slowly, showing my palms. "Officers," I said, my voice steady and deep. "I am unarmed, and I did not touch her." "Liar," Glenda screamed. "He is a monster. He came home ranting about winning the lottery, and when my daughter asked to see the ticket, he attacked her. Take him away." The officer approached me, handcuffs ready. "Sir, we are going to have to take you in. We can sort this out at the station." I looked the officer in the eye. His name tag read Sergeant Miller. "Sergeant, before you put those cuffs on me, I think you should see something," I said. "What is it?" Miller asked, pausing. I reached up to my collar slowly. I unbuttoned the top button of my dress shirt. It looked like a standard black button, but it was a high-definition, wide-angle lens. I tapped the small device hidden behind my lapel. I synced this to my phone in the car, I said, pulling my burner phone from my pocket. I pressed play and held the screen up for the sergeant to see. The video was crystal clear. It showed Ebony lunging at me, clawing at my jacket, screaming about her inheritance. It showed me stepping back, blocking her hand and pushing her gently away. It showed her tripping over her own feet and landing softly on the sofa. And then it showed her looking directly at the camera she did not know existed and deciding to scream that I had hit her. The audio was perfect. Every greedy word, every lie, every threat. Sergeant Miller watched the video. Then he watched it again. His face hardened. He looked over at Ebony, who had stopped crying and was now staring at the phone with wide, terrified eyes. He looked at Glenda, who had gone pale. "Ma'am," the sergeant said, turning to Glenda, his voice cold. "Filing a false police report is a crime. Attempting to frame someone for assault is a serious offense." But Glenda stammered. He must have edited it. Dustin does not know how to use cameras. He can barely use a flip phone." I stepped forward. "Dustin learned a few new tricks," I said. I looked at Glenda. I let her see the intelligence in my eyes, the sharpness that Dustin never had. I let her see the predator. She took a step back, fear replacing the greed in her eyes. She looked at the camera button, then at the phone, then at me. She realized in that moment that something was wrong. This was not the man she had bullied for 30 years. This was not the man she locked in the basement. "Who are you?" she whispered so low, only I could hear. "I am the man who is done playing games, Glenda," I replied. The officers issued a warning. a stern official warning that went on the permanent record. If they were called back to this house for a false report again, someone was going to jail in handcuffs, and it would not be me. They left, leaving a silence in the house that was heavier than lead. Ebony ran to her room, slamming the door. Blake disappeared into the garage. Glenda stood in the hallway staring at me. She looked small. I walked past her, bumping her shoulder with mine. "I am going to take a nap," I said. "In the master bedroom. Do not wake me up." I walked into the room she shared with Blake. I swept Blake's cologne bottles off the dresser with one arm, sending them crashing to the floor. I locked the door. I lay down on the bed my brother had paid for but had not slept in for 5 years. I closed my eyes, but I did not sleep. I listened. I listened to them whispering in the kitchen. They were scared. Good. Fear makes people make mistakes, and I was counting on them making a big one. The lottery lie had worked. The camera had worked. Now it was time to turn up the heat. The morning sun filtered through the blinds of the master bedroom where I had slept the sleep of the righteous. I stretched my limbs, feeling the luxury of the high thread count sheets my brother had paid for but never enjoyed. The house was quiet, too quiet. The screaming match from yesterday had died down, leaving a heavy, suffocating tension in the air. I unlocked the door and walked into the hallway. The smell of bacon and fresh coffee hit me. It was not the cheap stuff. It was the good coffee. I walked into the kitchen. Glenda was standing at the stove flipping pancakes. She turned when I entered and smiled. It was a terrifying sight. The corners of her mouth turned up, but her eyes remained cold and reptilian. "Good morning, Dustin," she said, her voice dripping with artificial sweetness. "I made your favorites. Blueberry pancakes and crispy bacon. Sit down, honey." Honey. She had not called Dustin honey in 20 years. She usually called him useless or idiot. I sat down at the main table, not the small rickety one in the corner. She placed a plate in front of me. It was piled high with food. She poured me coffee. She touched my shoulder, a lingering caress that made my skin crawl. "I am so sorry about yesterday," she whispered. "We were just so shocked about the lottery ticket. We overreacted. You know how stress gets to me." I cut a piece of pancake. I chewed slowly, watching her. I knew this tactic. When the stick fails, use the carrot. When intimidation fails, use manipulation. "It is okay, Glenda." I lied. "I understand." She sat down across from me, clasping her hands together. "I was thinking, Dustin, you have been acting so different lately. The lottery win, the aggression, the confusion. I think the excitement was too much for you. I am worried about your blood pressure. I am worried about your heart." "I am fine," I said, taking a sip of coffee. "I know you think you are," she continued, her voice lowering to a conspiratorial whisper. "But Blake has a friend, a very good doctor named Dr. Davis. He specializes in geriatric stress. He agreed to see you this morning, just for a checkup, just to make sure you are okay to handle all this new money." I paused with the fork halfway to my mouth. Dr. Davis, I knew that name. My private investigator had sent me a file last night while I lay in bed. Dr. Lawrence Davis was not a geriatric specialist. He was a disgraced psychiatrist who had lost his hospital privileges for overprescribing sedatives. He was also a degenerate gambler who spent his nights at the underground poker tables in downtown Atlanta, tables where Blake also played. "I do not need a doctor," I said. "Please, Dustin," Glenda pleaded, reaching for my hand. "Do it for me. Do it for our marriage. If he gives you a clean bill of health, I will stop worrying. We can start fresh. We can enjoy the winnings together." I looked at her hand on mine. Her nails were perfectly manicured, paid for with my brother's pension. I looked at her eyes. She was desperate. She needed me in that office. "Okay," I said. "I will go." She exhaled a breath she had been holding. "Thank you, honey. Blake will drive us. We have an appointment at 10. I finished my breakfast. I excused myself, saying I needed to use the bathroom. I walked down the hall, but I did not go to the bathroom. I stopped outside the guest room where Blake was sleeping. The door was cracked open. I could hear him whispering on the phone. I pressed my ear to the gap. "Yeah, she got him to agree," Blake whispered. "We are bringing him in an hour." "No, Davis, do not mess this up. He is acting crazy. He thinks he is a tough guy. Just give him the cocktail." "Yeah, the heavy one. I need him drooling by noon." Once he is sedated, I can get his hand on the signature line for the power of attorney. We will tell the judge he had a psychotic break. I listened, my blood turning to ice. The cocktail. They were going to chemically lobotomize me. They were going to turn my brother's brain into mush so they could steal a fortune that did not even exist. I walked away from the door. I went to the bathroom and splashed cold water on my face. I looked in the mirror. "You want crazy, Blake," I whispered to my reflection. "I will show you crazy." I reached into my pocket and took out a small vial of liquid I carried for emergencies. It was a potent military-grade stimulant designed to keep Special Forces operators awake and alert for 72 hours straight. It counteracted sedatives. It kept the brain firing even when the body wanted to shut down. I drank it. It tasted like battery acid. I walked out to the driveway. Blake was waiting in the car, his face a mask of false concern. Glenda sat in the passenger seat. I got in the back. The ride to the clinic was silent. Blake drove with white knuckles. Glenda kept looking at me in the rearview mirror, smiling that fake plastic smile. We pulled up to a strip mall on the outskirts of town. The clinic was wedged between a liquor store and a pawn shop. Dr. Davis's office did not look like a place of healing. It looked like a place where hope went to die. We walked in. The waiting room was empty. A receptionist with tired eyes waved us through. Dr. Davis was waiting in exam room B. He was a small, sweaty man with shaking hands and a stain on his white coat. He looked like a man who owed money to dangerous people. Because he was. "Mr. Robinson," he said, his voice trembling slightly, "please sit on the table." Glenda and Blake stood by the door, blocking the exit. I hopped onto the exam table. I swung my legs. I looked around the room. There were no diplomas on the wall, just pharmaceutical posters. "So what is the problem?" Davis asked, avoiding my eyes. "My wife thinks I am crazy," I said cheerfully. "Because I won the lottery." Davis laughed nervously. "Well, let us just check your vitals." He wrapped a blood pressure cuff around my arm. His hands smelled of tobacco and stale bourbon. He pumped the bulb. He frowned at the gauge. "Your pressure is a little high," he muttered. "Very high, actually. You seem agitated." "I am excited," I said. "I am rich." "Right," Davis said. He turned to a metal tray. On it sat a syringe filled with a clear liquid. "The cocktail. I think we need to give you something to calm your nerves, Mr. Robinson," he said, picking up the needle. "Just a mild sedative. It will help you think clearly." I watched the needle. I watched his hand. Blake took a step forward, his eyes eager. "Do it, Doc. He needs it." Davis approached me. "Just a little pinch," he said. I waited until he was inches away, until the needle was hovering over my arm. Then I moved. I grabbed Davis's wrist. I did not just hold it. I crushed it. My grip was like a steel vise. I twisted his arm, forcing the needle away from me and pointing it back at his own chest. Davis yelped, dropping the syringe. It clattered to the floor, rolling under the table. Blake shouted, "Hey, let him go, you maniac!" I did not let go. I pulled Davis close to my face. I stared into his watery, bloodshot eyes. "Listen to me, Lawrence," I whispered. My voice was low, dangerous. He froze. "How did you know my first name?" he stammered. "I know a lot about you, Lawrence," I said. "I know about the game at the warehouse on 4th Street. I know about the $50,000 you owe to a man named Detroit Red. I know he gave you until Friday to pay up, or he is going to break your fingers one by one." Davis turned pale. All the color drained from his face, leaving him looking like wet dough. Who are you?" he gasped. "I am the man who bought your debt this morning," I lied. "I called Red. I paid him off. You do not owe him any more. You owe me." Davis's eyes went wide. You paid it." "I did," I said, tightening my grip. "And now I own you. I own your practice. I own your license. I own your freedom." Blake stepped forward, trying to intervene. Dad let him go. I looked at Blake. "Sit down, boy," I barked. Blake stopped, stunned by the command in my voice. I turned back to Davis. "Here is what is going to happen, Lawrence. You are going to walk out into that waiting room. You are going to tell my wife that I am the sanest man you have ever met. You are going to tell her that I am sharp, capable, and completely in control of my faculties. You are going to sign a document stating that I am mentally fit to handle all my own affairs, financial and legal, and you are going to do it right now." "But, Blake," Davis stammered, looking at my son-in-law. "Forget Blake," I hissed. "Blake is broke. Blake cannot save you from Detroit Red. I can. If you do not do exactly what I say, I will call Red back and tell him the payment did not go through. And then I will call the medical board and tell them about the cocktail you were about to give me." Davis was shaking so hard his teeth were chattering. "Okay," he whispered. Okay, I will do it. Please do not call Red. I let go of his wrist. He stumbled back, rubbing his arm. He looked at the syringe on the floor, then at me. He saw a man who was not Dustin Robinson. He saw a monster. Get the paperwork, I said. Davis scrambled to his desk. He pulled out a form. He scribbled furiously, his pen tearing through the paper. He stamped it. He signed it. He handed it to me. Mental competency confirmed. No signs of dementia. Patient is fully oriented. I took the paper. I folded it and put it in my breast pocket. Now tell them I said. We walked out of the exam room. Glenda was waiting in the hallway, wringing her hands expectantly. She looked at Davis, waiting to hear the words that would give her control of my life. Well, doctor, she asked, does he need to be committed? Davis looked at Glenda. He looked at Blake, who was standing behind me, looking confused and terrified. Then he looked at me. Mrs. Robinson. Davis said, his voice cracking. Your husband is in excellent health. His mental faculties are perfect. In fact, he tested higher than average for cognitive function. There is absolutely no reason for concern. He is fine. Glenda's jaw dropped. What she screeched. That is impossible. He hallucinates. He is aggressive. You said... I was mistaken, Davis interrupted her. He is fine. Please take him home, and please do not come back. Davis turned and ran back into his office, slamming the door and locking it. I smiled at Glenda. See, honey, I said. I told you I was fine. The doctor says I am smarter than the average bear. Glenda looked at the closed door, then at me. Her face was a mask of confusion and fear. She knew the plan. She knew Davis was supposed to ruin me. She did not understand how I had flipped him in 5 minutes. She looked at me, and for the first time she really saw me. She saw the way I stood. She saw the lack of fear. She saw the cold, hard intelligence in my eyes. Let us go home, I said, walking past her. I have a lot of planning to do for my winnings. I walked out to the car, leaving them standing in the hallway of the dirty clinic. They had tried to trap a rat and found a tiger, and now the tiger was loose in their house. The drive back was dead silent. Blake drove staring straight ahead, his hands gripping the wheel so hard his knuckles were white. Glenda stared out the window, refusing to look at me. I sat in the back, humming a little tune, checking the messages on my burner phone. My lawyer Mercer had sent a text. Background check complete on the real estate company. You were right. It is big. I smiled. The asylum plot had failed. But they were not done. I knew they were desperate. And desperate people do stupid things. I was counting on it. When we got home, I went straight to the guest room and locked the door. I called Mercer. Tell me, I said. Duke Mercer said, his voice excited. You are not going to believe this. The house. Dustin's house. It is sitting right in the middle of a proposed commercial development. A massive shopping center. A developer has been buying up the neighborhood quietly for 2 years. Dustin's lot is the keystone. Without it, the project fails. How much, I asked. They offered the neighbors $300,000. But for the keystone lot, Mercer paused. Duke, they are authorizing offers up to $4 million. $4 million. I looked around the room. I thought about the way Blake had been pushing Glenda to sell. I thought about the pressure. Blake knows, I said. He has to. Mercer agreed. He works in real estate, right? He probably got wind of the development. He is trying to get Dustin to sell the house for peanuts, probably to a shell company he controls, so he can flip it to the developers for millions. It all made sense. The abuse, the rush, the desperation. It wasn't just about my brother being annoying. It was about $4 million. They were willing to kill him for it. I hung up the phone. My blood was boiling. They were going to steal his life and his legacy. I heard a knock on the door. Dustin Glenda called out, her voice sickeningly sweet again. Honey, open up. We need to talk. I opened the door. Glenda stood there holding a tray with tea and cookies. She was smiling, but her eyes were frantic. I was thinking, she said, walking into the room, since we are celebrating your good health and your winnings, we should have a party. A big anniversary party. For us. 40 years, Dustin. Can you believe it? I looked at her. I saw the gears turning. She realized force had failed. She realized medicine had failed. Now she was going back to the oldest trick in the book. Public pressure. A party, I asked. Yes, she said, setting the tray down. This Saturday. We will invite everyone. The neighbors, the church folks, everyone. And she paused, licking her lips. I think it would be the perfect time for you to make a grand gesture, to show everyone how much you love your family. A grand gesture, I repeated. Yes, she said, like signing the house over to the children, as a gift, to secure their future. You have the lottery money now, right? You do not need this old house. Imagine how good you will look in front of the pastor, in front of everyone, the generous patriarch. I smiled. It was a trap, a public trap. She wanted to corner me in front of 100 witnesses and shame me into signing the deed. That sounds wonderful, Glenda, I said. Let us do it. She blinked, surprised it was this easy. Really? Really, I said. A big party. Invite everyone, especially Blake's boss, and the pastor. I want everyone to see what I am going to do. She beamed. Oh, Dustin, you are making me so happy. She ran out of the room to start making calls. I closed the door. I picked up my phone and called Dustin at the Ritz-Carlton. Brother, I said, get a haircut, buy a suit. You are coming home on Saturday, and you are going to be the star of the show. I hung up. Saturday was going to be Judgment Day, and I was going to bring the fire. The week leading up to the anniversary party was a blur of frantic activity, orchestrated by a woman who believed she had finally won. Glenda was in her element. She moved through the house like a general marshalling troops barking orders at florists and caterers on the phone while simultaneously playing the role of the blushing bride to be celebrated. She spent thousands of dollars my brother did not have on decorations, flowers, and a tent for the backyard. She told everyone who would listen that Dustin wanted to do this, that Dustin wanted to celebrate their 40 years of love with a grand gesture. I watched her from the shadows of the living room, my eyes following her every move. She was not planning a party. She was planning a public execution of my brother's ownership rights. She had invited everyone, the neighbors who had heard them screaming for years, the deacon from the church who thought Glenda was a saint, even Blake's boss from the real estate firm, a man named Mr. Henderson, was coming. Dustin, she said to me on Thursday evening, her eyes gleaming with a manic light. I wrote a little speech for you. Just a few lines. You know how you get tongue-tied in front of crowds. She handed me a piece of paper. I took it and read the script she had prepared. I, Dustin Robinson, want to thank my beautiful wife for 40 wonderful years. As a token of my eternal love and gratitude, I am signing the deed to our home over to her and our children today to secure their future and show my devotion. It was sickening. It was a confession signed under duress but disguised as a romantic gift. She wanted me to read this in front of 100 people. She knew that Dustin, the real Dustin, would never cause a scene. He would never embarrass her in front of the church folks. He would read the card. He would sign the paper. And he would sign away his life because he was too polite to say no. That is beautiful, Glenda, I said, folding the paper and putting it in my pocket. I will memorize it. She patted my cheek, her nails digging slightly into my skin. Good boy. Make sure you do. We do not want to ruin the moment, do we? The threat was clear. If I went off script, there would be consequences. But she did not know that the script I was following was written in a war room, not a kitchen. I went to the guest room and locked the door. It was time to make the call. I dialed the number for the Ritz-Carlton in Buckhead. Connect me to room 402, I said. A moment later, my brother's voice came on the line. He sounded different, stronger. Hello. Dustin, it is Duke. Hey, Duke, I did what you said. I got a haircut. I bought a suit. A blue one. Like you used to wear. Good, I said. How do you feel? I feel human, Duke. I ate a steak last night and nobody yelled at me. I slept until 10 this morning and nobody called me useless. It is weird. It is not weird, Dustin. It is life. It is the life you deserve. And it is the life you are going to fight for. He was silent for a moment. Are you sure about this Saturday thing? I am scared, Duke. Glenda, she has a way of looking at me. I freeze. You are not going to freeze, I told him, my voice firm, because you are not going alone. You are going to walk in there and you are going to see me standing right next to you. And you are going to see the look on her face when she realizes her power is gone. Okay, he whispered. Okay. I trust you. Be ready, I said. I will send a car for you at 5. Park down the street. Stay in the tinted windows until I text you. Do not let anyone see you. I hung up. The asset was ready. Now I needed the ammunition. I called Mercer, my lawyer. He picked up on the first ring. Duke, I have the papers drawn up, Mercer said. The divorce decree, the restraining orders, the fraud complaints. It is all ready to go. But I found something else, something big. What is it, I asked, sensing the tension in his voice. You were right about the real estate company Blake works for, Mercer said. But it goes deeper than we thought. I pulled the public records for the county development plans. They were buried deep, but I have a friend in the zoning office. Go on. That neighborhood where Dustin lives, it is zoned residential right now. But there is a petition filed 6 months ago to rezone it commercial. A massive petition. Who filed it? A shell company called Obsidian Holdings, Mercer replied. But guess who owns Obsidian Holdings? It is a subsidiary of a national retail giant. They are planning to build a supercenter, Duke, a massive shopping complex right where your brother's house sits. I walked to the window and looked out at the backyard where the tent was being set up. I looked at the trees, the fence, the garden Dustin had tended for years. And Dustin's lot, I asked. It is the linchpin, Mercer said. It is the access point. They need his land for the main entrance and the parking structure. Without his lot, they cannot build. The other neighbors have already sold options on their land for peanuts, thinking they were getting a good deal. But Dustin, he is the holdout. What is the real value, Mercer? Give me a number. Blake has been telling Glenda the house is worth maybe $300,000 tops, right? Trying to get her to sell fast. Right. Duke, the commercial appraisal for that acre of land, considering its strategic necessity for a $100 million project, is $4 million. I nearly dropped the phone. $4 million. They are sitting on a gold mine, Mercer continued. And Blake knows it. He has been trying to get the deed in his name or Glenda's name so he can flip it to the developers. He probably already has a side deal with them for a finder's fee. He is trying to steal $4 million from your brother. Everything clicked into place. The abuse, the desperation, the gas leak, the cliff. They were not just trying to get rid of an annoying old man. They were trying to clear the path to a fortune. Blake saw Dustin not as a father-in-law, but as a $4 million obstacle standing between him and a life of luxury. And Glenda, she was either a co-conspirator or a useful idiot he was playing like a fiddle. He is pushing for the signature on Saturday, I said, my voice cold. He wants the deed signed over before the zoning change goes public. Exactly, Mercer said. Once Glenda or Blake has the title, they sell it on Monday morning, and Dustin gets nothing. Bring the file, Mercer, I said. Bring everything. The zoning maps, the appraisal, the corporate ownership documents. I want to show them exactly what they tried to steal. I will be there, Duke, with bells on. I hung up the phone and stared out the window. The sun was setting, casting long red shadows across the lawn. I looked at the dilapidated house, the peeling paint, the overgrown bushes. For years I had seen it as a symbol of my brother's poverty, a sad little shack where he hid from the world. Now I saw it differently. It was not a shack, it was a winning lottery ticket. It was a legacy. It was the future Dustin had been denied. And they wanted to take it from him. They wanted to trick him into giving it away for a round of applause and a slice of cake. I walked out of the guest room and went downstairs. Glenda was in the living room arranging flowers. Blake was on the couch tapping away on his phone, probably checking the odds on some game or messaging his developer contacts. Hey, Dad, Blake said, not looking up. Make sure you shower before the party tomorrow. We do not want you smelling like the basement. I stopped at the bottom of the stairs. I looked at the back of his head. I thought about the $4 million. I thought about the gas line. I walked over to the couch and stood behind him. Blake, I said. He turned his head, annoyed. What? I just wanted to say thank you, I said. He frowned, confused. For what? For showing me what this house is really worth, I said, enigmatic. He scoffed. It is a dump old man, but do not worry. Once you sign it over, we will take care of it. I smiled. A shark smile. I bet you will, Blake. I bet you will. I walked away, leaving him unsettled. He did not know what I meant. He thought I was just a senile old man rambling. He had no idea that I knew the secret he was guarding with his life. Saturday arrived with a bright, cruel sunshine. The house was transformed. White linens covered the tables in the backyard. Flowers were everywhere. A caterer was setting up chafing dishes. I dressed slowly. I put on the charcoal suit I had bought at Neiman Marcus. I put on the white silk shirt. I tied the tie with a perfect Windsor knot. I put on the gold watch. I looked in the mirror. I did not see Dustin. I saw Duke, and today Duke was going to bring down the house. I walked downstairs. Glenda was waiting in the foyer wearing a dress that was trying too hard to be elegant. She looked me up and down and frowned. "Where did you get that suit?" she asked, suspicious. "I told you," I said, smoothing the lapel. "I got lucky." She narrowed her eyes, but the guests were arriving and she had to play the hostess. "Just remember your lines," she hissed. "Do not embarrass me." I walked out into the backyard. The party was in full swing. There were about 50 people there. Neighbors I recognized from my childhood, church members, strangers. Blake was holding court near the bar, laughing loudly with a group of men in suits. I recognized one of them from the LinkedIn profile Mercer had sent me. It was his boss, the real estate broker. They were clinking glasses, celebrating a deal that had not even closed yet. Ebony was showing off her new shoes to a group of friends, completely ignoring the fact that her father was standing right there. I circulated through the crowd, shaking hands, playing the part of the grateful husband. "Dustin, you look great," Mrs. Higgins said, patting my arm. "Retirement suits you." "Thank you, Mrs. Higgins," I said. "It is amazing what a little fresh air can do." I kept my eye on the driveway. At 5 o'clock sharp, a black sedan pulled up down the street. It parked in the shadows of a large oak tree. I checked my phone. Here read the text from Dustin. "Showtime," I whispered. Glenda tapped a spoon against a champagne glass. The sharp cling cut through the chatter. The crowd quieted down. "Attention, everyone?" Glenda called out, beaming. "If I could have your attention, please." She stood on a small riser that had been set up near the back porch. Blake stood next to her, looking smug. Ebony was to her left, looking bored. "We are so happy you could all join us today to celebrate 40 years of marriage," she said, her voice trembling with fake emotion. "It has not always been easy, but love conquers all." A few people clapped politely. "And today my husband Dustin has a very special announcement to make." Glenda continued gesturing for me to join her, a gesture that will show just how committed he is to this family. I walked up the riser. I stood next to her. I looked out at the sea of faces. I saw the anticipation. I saw the judgment. Glenda handed me the microphone. Her hand was cold. "Read the card," she whispered through her frozen smile. I took the microphone. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the piece of paper she had given me. I unfolded it. I looked at it. Then I looked at Blake. He was grinning like a Cheshire cat. He thought he had won. He thought the $4 million was in the bag. I looked at the crowd. "My wife wants me to read this card," I said, my voice amplified by the speakers. "It says that I want to give her my house. It says that I want to sign over everything I own to her and my children to secure their future." Glenda nodded encouragingly. "Yes, honey, go on." I looked at the paper again. Then I slowly, deliberately crumpled it into a ball. I dropped the paper on the floor. "But I am not going to read that," I said, my voice dropping to a steel baritone. "Because that is a lie." The crowd gasped. Glenda's smile faltered. Blake's grin vanished. Instead, I continued. "I want to tell you a story about two brothers." I looked directly at Blake. "And a story about a snake," I added. Glenda reached for the microphone. "Dustin, what are you doing?" she hissed. "Stop this now." I pulled the mic away. "No, Glenda," I said loudly. "I am done stopping. I am done listening." I turned back to the crowd. "For 30 years I have lived in this house," I said. "I built this porch. I planted those trees. I worked every day to provide for this family. And for the last 5 years I have slept in the basement on a mattress that smells like mold while my son-in-law sleeps in my bed." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. People looked at each other confused and shocked. "You see, folks," I continued, walking to the edge of the riser. "My family thinks I am useless. They think I am stupid. They think I am a broken old man who can be bullied and tricked." I pointed a finger at Blake. "This man, my son-in-law, has been stealing from me for years. He has gambled away my pension. He has treated me like a dog in my own home. And do you know why he is here today? Do you know why he wants me to sign this deed?" Blake stepped forward, his face red. "Shut up, old man. You are drunk. Get him off the stage." I raised my voice, drowning him out. "He wants me to sign this deed because he knows a secret worth $4 million. The number hung in the air. $4 million. The crowd went silent instantly. "That is right," I said. "This house, this dirt we are standing on, it is not worth $300,000. It is worth $4 million to a commercial developer who needs it for a shopping mall. And Blake knows it. He has known it for months, and he was going to trick me into signing it over so he could sell it and keep every penny for himself." Liar Blake screamed, losing control. "You are lying. He is senile. Do not listen to him." I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out a folded document. "This is the commercial appraisal," I said, holding it up, "dated 2 weeks ago, addressed to the firm Blake works for." I threw the papers into the crowd. They fluttered down like confetti. People grabbed them, reading the numbers pointing. "And this," I said, pulling out another document, "is a life insurance policy. $500,000 on my life, taken out 3 months ago. Beneficiary Blake Thomas." I looked at Glenda. She was staring at Blake, her mouth open in horror. She did not know about the policy. "You did not know, did you, Glenda?" I asked. "You thought you were partners, but he was going to kill me, and then he was going to cut you out." Blake lunged. He rushed the riser. His fists clenched, his eyes wild with panic and rage. "He is lying," he shrieked. "I will kill you." He scrambled up the steps. I did not move. I waited. Just as he reached me, a large figure stepped out from the side of the tent, a man in a dark suit with broad shoulders. My bodyguard provided by Mercer. He intercepted Blake with the grace of a linebacker, stopping him cold with a stiff arm to the chest. Blake flew backward, landing in the grass with a thud. "Stay down," the bodyguard growled. I looked down at Blake, gasping for air on the lawn. "It is over, Blake," I said. "The game is over." I looked at Glenda. She was trembling, tears streaming down her face. But they were tears of fear, not remorse. "And you," I said, "you let this happen. You let him treat me like an animal, because you were greedy, because you wanted the easy life. Well, Glenda, the easy life is gone." I reached up to my face. I grabbed the glasses. I was wearing glasses with plain glass lenses that Dustin wore. I took them off and threw them on the ground, shattering them. "I am not signing anything," I said, "because this house is not mine to give." I looked toward the street, and I am not Dustin Robinson. The crowd gasped again. Glenda stared at me, confusion warring with terror in her eyes. "What? Who are you?" she whispered. "I am Duke," I said, and then I pointed to the gate. "That is Dustin." The gate opened, and my brother walked in. The night before the party, the air in the house was so thick with tension, you could almost taste it like copper on your tongue. I sat in the darkened living room, the only light coming from a street lamp filtering through the sheer curtains. I had opened a bottle of the vintage Bordeaux I bought at the wine shop, pouring it into a crystal glass I found hidden in the back of the china cabinet. It was good wine, heavy and complex, much too good for this house and certainly too good for the people sleeping upstairs. It was 2 a.m. when I heard the fumble of keys at the front door. The lock clicked and the door swung open, revealing a silhouette swaying against the humid Atlanta night air. It was Blake. He stumbled across the threshold, kicking the door shut with his heel. The smell of cheap whiskey and stale cigarette smoke rolled off him in waves. He was drunk. Not the happy kind of drunk, but the mean kind. The kind that looks for a fight because it feels good to hurt someone. He stopped when he saw me sitting in the armchair. He squinted his eyes, adjusting to the dim light. "Well, look at the king of the castle," he slurred. Stepping into the room, his tie was undone, hanging loose around his neck, and his shirt was stained. I took a slow sip of wine, watching him over the rim of the glass. I did not say a word. I just let him fill the silence with his own noise. "What are you drinking, old man?" he asked, walking toward me, his steps heavy and uncoordinated. "That smells expensive. Did you steal that too?" "I bought it," I said calmly, holding up the bottle. "Would you like a glass, Blake? It might help you sleep." He laughed, a harsh, barking sound that echoed in the quiet house. He grabbed the bottle from the table, ignoring the glass I offered, and took a swig straight from the neck. Red wine spilled down his chin, staining his white shirt. He wiped it away with the back of his hand, his eyes gleaming with malice. "You think you are something special now? Do not you?" he sneered, looming over me. Because you won a little money. You think a cheap suit and a bottle of wine changes what you are? And what am I, Blake? I asked, my voice soft, playing the role of the confused old man. He leaned down, getting right in my face. I could smell the rot in him. You are nothing, he whispered. You are just a placeholder. You are a relic sitting on a gold mine that you are too stupid to understand. And honestly, Dustin, I am tired of looking at you. He took another drink, swaying slightly. I saw my opening. Drunks love to talk. They love to brag. They love to feel superior, especially when they think they are talking to someone beneath them. I needed him to talk. I needed him to say the words out loud so the recording app running on the phone in my breast pocket could catch every syllable. You have always hated me, haven't you? Blake, I asked, leaning back in the chair, making myself look smaller. You hate this house. You hate my cooking. You seem to hate everything about us. So why did you stay? Why did you marry Ebony if we are so beneath you? The question hit him like a physical blow. He blinked, stepping back a little as if trying to process the audacity of my inquiry. Then a cruel smile spread across his face. He walked around the room, running his hand along the back of the sofa, touching the walls with a possessive greed. Why did I marry her? He repeated, laughing to himself. You really do not know, do you? You think it was for love? You think I looked at your loud, opinionated daughter and saw my soulmate? He took another long pull from the bottle, emptying half of it. I married her because I did my homework, old man, he said, turning back to face me. I work in real estate, remember? I know how to read a map. I know how to read zoning laws. 3 years ago, I saw the preliminary sketches for the Midtown expansion. I saw where the new highway exit was going to be. And I saw this house, this ugly little brick pile sitting right in the middle of the red zone. He walked back to me, his eyes wide with the excitement of his own brilliance. It is not about you, Dustin. It is never about you. It is about the dirt. This dirt we are standing on right now. It is the only access point for the new shopping center. Without this lot, they cannot build the main entrance. And do you know what that makes this dirt worth? I shook my head, feigning ignorance. A few $100,000, maybe? He threw his head back and laughed so hard he nearly choked. It was a maniacal sound echoing off the walls. 300,000, he wheezed, wiping tears from his eyes. Oh, you pathetic fool. It is worth $4 million. $4 million. And the developers have already authorized the buyout. They are just waiting for me to deliver the title. $4 million, I whispered, letting the shock play across my face even though I already knew. But Ebony does. She know. Blake sneered, his lip curling in disgust. Ebony does not know anything. She thinks we are broke. She thinks we are going to sell this place for peanuts, move to a condo, and live happily ever after. She is a useful idiot. Dustin. Just like her mother. My hands tightened on the armrests of the chair. It took every ounce of my discipline not to stand up and break his jaw right then and there. I had to remind myself that Duke Robinson was a strategist, not a brawler. I needed the rest of the confession. So what is the plan, Blake? I asked, pouring more bait into the water. You sell the house, and then what? You and Ebony live like kings. He looked at me with genuine pity, as if I were a child who believed in Santa Claus. There is no me and Ebony, he said, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. The second that money hits my account, I am gone. I filed the divorce papers 3 weeks ago. They are sitting in my desk drawer at work, waiting for a signature. I am taking my half and I am moving to Costa Rica. I am done with her. I am done with her whining. I am done with her spending, and I am definitely done with her family. I watched him, the monster, revealing his true face. He did not just want the money. He wanted to destroy my niece. He wanted to use her, discard her, and leave her with nothing. It was cold. It was calculated. It was exactly what I expected from a man who would push his in-laws off a cliff. And Glenda, I asked, does she know you are leaving? Blake smirked, glancing toward the stairs. Oh, Glenda knows. We have a deal. She helps me get you to sign the house over. She helps me get the power of attorney, and I give her $1 million. She hates you just as much as I do. Dustin. She wants you gone so she can go back to pretending she is high society. She thinks $1 million will buy her a new life. So you two are partners, I said, clarifying for the record. Partners in crime, he agreed. raising the bottle in a mock toast. She gets her cut, I get mine, and Ebony gets the curb. It is a perfect plan. And the best part is you are going to help us. You are going to sign those papers tomorrow at the party because you are a weak, spineless old man who just wants his wife to stop yelling at him. He finished the wine and dropped the bottle on the carpet. It rolled away, stopping against my shoe. You should get some sleep, Dustin, he said, patting my cheek roughly. Big day tomorrow. You want to look good for the cameras when you sign your life away. He turned and stumbled toward the stairs, chuckling to himself. I sat there in the dark, listening to his heavy footsteps as he climbed to the second floor. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the phone. I stopped the recording and saved the file. I uploaded it to the cloud, immediately emailing a copy to Mercer just to be safe. I had him. I had the confession. I had the motive. I had the conspiracy. It was all there in his own slur, filled voice. I stood up to go to bed, but then I heard a sound. A soft creak, like a floorboard settling under weight. I looked up toward the top of the stairs. The hallway was dark, but a sliver of light was spilling out from a door that was slightly ajar. It was Ebony's room. I walked to the bottom of the stairs and looked up. I saw a shadow move. I saw a hand grip the doorframe, white-knuckled against the wood. Ebony was standing there just inside her room. She was not asleep. She had been listening. She had heard every word. She had heard her husband call her a useful idiot. She had heard him admit he was leaving her. She had heard him say he was going to steal the family fortune and leave her with nothing. I did not say anything. I did not call out to her. I just looked at the door, letting the silence stretch between us. She knew now. She knew that her father was not the villain. She knew that the man she had sided with, the man she had bullied her own father to please, was a snake who was planning to bite her. I turned off the living room lamp, plunging the downstairs into darkness. I went back to the guest room and locked the door. I lay down on the bed, staring at the ceiling. The pieces were all in place. The players were positioned. And now I had a wild card. Ebony knew. I wondered what she would do. Would she confront him? Would she cry? Would she come to me? I closed my eyes, visualizing the party tomorrow. I saw the tent. I saw the guests. And I saw the moment when the trap would spring. Sleep well. Blake, I whispered into the dark, enjoy your last night of freedom. Because tomorrow the bill comes due, and I am going to make sure you pay every single cent. The sun rose on the morning of the anniversary party with a humid heat that promised a storm later in the day. It was fitting weather for what was about to happen. I sat on the back porch drinking a cup of black coffee, watching the caterers set up the white tent that would serve as the arena for my family destruction. I was calm. It was the calm of a soldier cleaning his rifle before the first shot is fired. The house was waking up around me, filled with the tension of three predators realizing there might not be enough meat for everyone. I heard the sliding glass door open behind me. I did not turn around. I knew who it was by the scent of expensive vanilla perfume and the nervous energy radiating off her. It was Ebony. She stepped onto the porch, her heels clicking softly on the wood I had built with my own hands 30 years ago. She did not yell. She did not demand I wash her car. She sat down in the chair next to me, pulling her silk robe tight around her body. She looked tired. Her eyes were red-rimmed, and she kept glancing back at the house as if she expected a monster to burst through the glass. "Dad," she whispered. Her voice was shaking. I took a slow sip of coffee and looked at her. I waited. "We need to talk," she said, leaning in close. "And you need to listen to me because I am the only one in this house who is actually on your side." I almost choked on my coffee. On my side. This was the girl who had watched her mother lock me in a basement. This was the girl who had spent my pension on handbags while I ate leftovers. But I nodded, playing the part of the confused old man. "What is it, Princess?" I asked, using the nickname Dustin had given her when she was innocent. Ebony swallowed hard. She looked at the door again, ensuring we were alone. "Blake is going to screw us," she said. Her voice was low, urgent. "I heard him last night, Dad. I heard him talking to himself. He thinks you are stupid. He thinks he can trick you." I looked at her face. I looked for a shred of love. I looked for a daughter concerned for her father. I looked for outrage that her husband was abusing an old man. I found none of it. What I found was greed. Pure, unadulterated panic that someone else was going to eat her lunch. What do you mean? I asked. The house, she said, her eyes wide. He knows something about the land. He says it is worth millions. Not thousands, Dad. Millions. And he is planning to take the deed, sell it, and run off to Costa Rica with all the money. He is going to leave me with nothing. He is going to leave us with nothing. She grabbed my hand. Her palms were sweaty. He is a snake, Dad. He never loved me. He just wanted the property. You cannot sign those papers he gives you today. You cannot give it to him. I looked down at our joined hands. So she knew. She knew the value. She knew the betrayal. And her first instinct was not to save me, but to secure her cut. What should I do? Ebony, I asked, making my voice tremble slightly. I do not want to lose the house. Glenda said it was for the best. Mom is an idiot, Ebony hissed. She thinks she can control Blake, but she cannot. He will cut her throat the second he gets that signature. No, Dad. You have to trust me. I have a plan. I leaned back, feigning interest. A plan. Yes, she said. I typed up a new document this morning while everyone was asleep. Instead of signing the house to Mom and Blake, you sign it to me. Just me. I stared at her. The audacity was breathtaking. To you, I repeated. Yes, she said, nodding vigorously. I am your daughter. I am your flesh and blood. If you sign it to me, I will kick Blake out. I will divorce him. I will make sure Mom does not send you to a home. I will take care of you, Dad. I promise. We will sell the land for the real price and we will be rich, you and me. I looked into her eyes. They were shining with avarice. She did not care that I had been sleeping on a concrete floor. She did not care that I was starving. She only cared that Blake was trying to steal the $4 million she felt entitled to. She was trying to hijack the heist. I felt a wave of nausea. I wanted to tell her that I was not her father. I wanted to tell her that her real father was a good man who would have given her the world if she had just been decent. But I pushed the anger down. I needed her to play her part. You would do that for me, I asked, widening my eyes. You would protect me. Of course, she lied, squeezing my hand. I love you, Daddy. I just want what is best for us. Sign the paper to me, and I will handle Blake. I will destroy him. I looked at the tent in the yard. I looked at the stage where the tragedy would unfold. Okay, Princess, I said, bring the papers. When we get on that stage today, you hand them to me. I will sign whatever you want. She beamed. It was the smile of a shark that just smelled blood in the water. Thank you, Daddy. You will not regret this. She leaned over and kissed my cheek. It felt like the kiss of Judas. She stood up, smoothing her robe. I have to go get ready. Do not say a word to Mom or Blake. Act normal. I watched her walk back into the house. She looked triumphant. She thought she had outsmarted everyone. She thought she had manipulated the senile old man one last time. She had no idea she had just signed her own social death warrant. I poured the rest of my coffee into the grass. It tasted bitter now. Suddenly the sliding door opened again. This time it was Glenda. She stepped out onto the porch, her eyes darting around suspiciously. She had seen Ebony leave. She had seen the conspiratorial whisper. She had seen the kiss. Who was that? She asked sharply, her voice shrill with paranoia. It was just Ebony, I said, innocent as a lamb. What did she want? Glenda demanded, walking over to me. What were you two talking about? Why was she whispering? I shrugged. She just wanted to wish me luck for the speech today. She said she was proud of me. Glenda narrowed her eyes. She did not believe me. She knew her daughter. She knew Ebony did not do proud unless there was a price tag attached. Glenda looked at the door where Ebony had vanished, then back at me. She smelled a rat. She thought her daughter was making a side deal. She thought she was being cut out. Did she say anything about the papers? Glenda asked, her voice tight. Did she say anything about Blake? No, I lied. She just said she loves us. Glenda scoffed. Love? That girl loves herself. She paced the small porch, her hands wringing together. The alliance was fracturing. Blake was planning to screw Glenda. Glenda was suspicious of everyone, and now Ebony was trying to steal the prize from both of them. It was a snake pit, and the snakes were starting to eat each other. Listen to me, Dustin, Glenda said, stopping in front of me. Her face was hard, desperate. Do not let anyone confuse you today. You stick to the plan. You read the card I gave you. You sign the papers I give you. Do you understand? I am the only one who takes care of you. I am the only one who keeps you out of the asylum. Do not forget that." I looked at her. I saw the fear behind the threat. She was terrified of losing control. "I won't forget, Glenda," I said. "I remember everything." She looked at me, searching for signs of rebellion, but I gave her nothing but the blank stare of a beaten husband. She huffed and turned around, marching back into the house to check on her decorations, to check on her traps, not realizing she was walking straight into mine. The next few hours were a masterclass in tension. The house felt like a bomb ticking down to zero. Blake was pacing the living room, checking his watch every 5 minutes, calling his developer contacts in hushed tones, assuring them the deal was done. He ignored Glenda. He ignored Ebony. He looked at me with a mixture of contempt and anticipation, like a butcher looking at a cow. Ebony was in her room printing documents. I could hear the printer humming. She came downstairs dressed in a sharp business suit, holding a blue folder like a shield. She smiled at me, a secret conspiratorial smile that made my stomach turn. She avoided Blake completely, not even looking at him. Glenda was everywhere all at once. She was yelling at the caterers, adjusting flowers, screaming at me to shower and get dressed. But her eyes were darting between her husband and her daughter. She saw the distance between them. She saw the coldness. She knew something was happening, but she did not know what. She was losing her grip, and it was driving her mad. I went upstairs to shower. I stood under the hot water, washing away the feeling of their touch. I scrubbed my cheek where Ebony had kissed me. I dressed slowly. I put on the charcoal suit again. I looked at myself in the mirror. "It is time," I whispered. I walked downstairs. The guests were arriving. Cars were lining the street. People were laughing, chatting, drinking champagne, unaware that they were walking into a crime scene. I saw my brother's truck parked down the street, deep in the shadows of the neighbor's oak tree. The windows were tinted, but I knew he was there. I knew he was watching. I walked out into the backyard. The heat was rising. The air was thick. Blake came up to me. He put a heavy arm around my shoulder. His breath smelled of mints and nerves. "Big day, old man," he said, squeezing my shoulder hard enough to bruise. "Do not mess this up. You sign that paper and you go back to your basement. You hesitate, and I promise you will wish you had died on that cliff." I looked at him. I smiled. "I am ready, Blake," I said. "I am more ready than you can possibly imagine." He laughed, thinking I was just a senile fool trying to be brave. He walked away to greet his boss, the man with the checkbook. I saw Ebony standing by the stage, clutching her blue folder. She caught my eye and nodded. I saw Glenda standing by the cake, holding the microphone, her knuckles white. They were all in position. The actors were on stage. The audience was seated. I walked toward the riser. My steps were steady. My heart was slow. The air was electric. Everyone thought they were about to win. Blake thought he was getting $4 million. Ebony thought she was getting the deed. Glenda thought she was getting security. They were all wrong. They were about to get justice. And justice was going to be loud. The sun began to dip below the tree line, casting long golden shadows across the backyard that Glenda had transformed into a stage for my execution. The air was thick with the scent of expensive lilies and the heavy perfume of 50 guests who were sweating in their Sunday best. The white tent billowed softly in the humid Atlanta breeze, snapping gently like a whip. The caterers moved silently through the crowd, offering trays of champagne and hors d'oeuvres paid for with money my brother did not have. It was a perfect scene. A beautiful lie constructed to hide the ugly truth, rotting at the foundation of this house. I stood near the edge of the patio watching them. Glenda was in her element. She floated from group to group, clutching a glass of sparkling cider, her face flushed with the intoxication of attention. She was playing the role of the devoted wife, the saint who had stood by her simple husband for 40 years. She touched arms. She laughed at bad jokes. She wiped away fake tears of joy. Was magnificent, and she was repulsive. Blake stood near the bar, his jacket unbuttoned, his tie loose. He was holding court with a group of men, including Mr. Henderson, his boss from the real estate firm. Henderson was a large man with a red face and eyes like a cash register. He was nodding as Blake spoke, patting him on the back, looking at the house with a hungry appraisal. They were not celebrating a marriage. They were celebrating a closing. They were counting their commission before the ink was even wet. Ebony hovered near the stage, clutching her blue folder to her chest like a shield. She looked pale. Her eyes darted between me and Blake, her alliance shifting with the wind. She wanted the money, but she was terrified of the explosion she knew was coming. She caught my eye and gave a small, jerky nod, reminding me of our deal, reminding me that she was supposed to be the one who walked away with the prize. I adjusted my tie. The silk felt cool against my neck. I checked the time on my gold watch. It was 5:30. The sun was setting on their empire, and they did not even know it. I felt the weight of the microphone in my pocket. I felt the reassuring pressure of the documents in my jacket. This was it. The moment Duke Robinson had come home for Glenda, stepped up onto the small riser she had rented. She tapped a silver spoon against her glass. The sharp ringing sound cut through the murmurs of the crowd. Silence rippled outward from the stage as faces turned toward her expectantly. "Thank you, everyone," she called out, her voice trembling with practiced emotion. "Thank you all for coming to share this special day with us. 40 years. It seems like just yesterday that Dustin and I said our vows in that little chapel down the road. We did not have much back then, just 2 hearts full of dreams and a whole lot of faith." The crowd murmured appreciatively. A few women dabbed at their eyes. I saw Mrs. Higgins nodding in the front row, completely bought in. "We have had our ups and downs," Glenda continued, wiping a tear from her cheek. "But through it all, Dustin has been my rock, my quiet strength. And today, to celebrate our life together and to secure the future of the family we built, my wonderful husband has decided to give us a gift of security, a gift of love." She gestured toward me, her hand sweeping through the air like a queen summoning a subject. "Dustin, honey, please join me up here." The crowd applauded politely. I walked through the parted sea of guests. My steps were steady. My face was a mask of benign confusion, the face of the man they thought I was. I climbed the 2 steps onto the riser. Glenda reached out and took my hand. Her palm was cold and clammy. She squeezed my fingers hard, a warning grip that said, "Do not mess this up." She turned to the small table set up on the stage. On it lay a leather-bound portfolio open to a legal document. The deed, the transfer of title. Next to it lay a heavy gold pen that looked like it cost more than my brother's weekly food budget. "This house," Glenda said, her voice swelling with pride. "This land. It has been our home. But Dustin knows that as we get older we need to be practical. He knows that our children, Blake and Ebony, are the future. So today, in front of God and all of you, he is signing the deed over to us, to ensure that this family legacy remains protected forever." She picked up the pen and held it out to me. The crowd clapped louder this time, urged on by Blake, who started cheering from the back. It was a wall of sound, a pressure designed to crush any resistance. Who would say no in front of the pastor? Who would say no in front of the neighbors? Glenda smiled at me, her eyes wide and manic. "Here, honey," she whispered, so only I could hear. "Just sign it, and then we can cut the cake." I took the pen. It was heavy, cool to the touch. I looked at the document. It was exactly what Mercer had said it would be. A quitclaim deed transferring full ownership to Glenda Robinson and Blake Thomas. Not Ebony, just them. The thieves. I looked at Blake, was raising his glass to me, a smirk plastered on his face. He thought he had won. He thought the old man was broken. He thought the $4 million was his. I looked at Ebony. She took a step forward, clutching her blue folder, ready to intervene, ready to present her own counteroffer, her own betrayal. I looked at the crowd. They were waiting, smiling, expecting the happy ending I did not sign. Instead, I reached over and took the microphone from the stand. Glenda flinched, surprised. She tried to hold on to it, but I pulled it away gently but firmly. "Thank you, Glenda," I said, my voice booming over the speakers. The feedback whined for a second, then settled. The crowd went quiet again. Before I signed this, I continued looking out at the faces. "I want to say a few words. I want to tell you a story." Glenda. Smile faltered. Her eyes darted to the side, scanning the crowd nervously. This was not in the script. Dustin did not make speeches. Dustin stuttered. Dustin hid. "Oh, honey," she said, laughing nervously, reaching for the mic. "We do not want to bore the guests. The cake is waiting." I moved the mic away from her hand. I turned my back to her, slightly blocking her out. "It is a short story," I promised the crowd, my voice dropping into a storytelling cadence. A story about love and sacrifice and the little things we do for family. I saw the pastor nod encouragingly. "Go ahead, brother. Dustin, speak your heart." "You see, folks," I began, walking to the edge of the stage, I have been thinking a lot about the last few years, about how my wife here has taken such good care of me. You know, people say I have lost weight. They ask me, "Dustin, what is your secret?" I patted my stomach. "Well, the secret is Glenda. Special diet," I said, chuckling dryly. "It is a very strict regimen. She calls it the leftovers diet. You see, to save money for the family. Glenda makes sure I only eat what is left after everyone else is full. Sometimes it is a chicken wing, sometimes it is just the broth. But hey, it keeps me trim, right? Who needs protein when you have love?" A few people chuckled nervously, unsure if I was joking. The laughter was thin brittle, and the accommodations. I continued pacing slowly. I know many of you have nice bedrooms with soft mattresses. But Glenda and Blake, they know that at my age a soft bed is bad for the back, so they set me up in a special suite, the basement suite. It is very private. Just me, the furnace and the concrete floor. It keeps me humble. It reminds me of my roots. Plus, the mold down there really clears out the sinuses. The nervous laughter died out. People started exchanging glances. Mrs. Higgins frowned, looking from me to Glenda. Glenda. His face had gone pale. She stepped forward, grabbing my arm, her nails digging into my suit jacket. "Dustin, that is enough." She hissed, her voice tight with panic. "You are confused. You need to sit down." I shook her off. I did not look at her. I looked at Blake. And my son-in-law. "Blake," I said, pointing him out in the crowd. "There he is. The man of the house. You know, folks, Blake treats me with such respect. He has special names for me. He calls me old man. He calls me useless. He even has a fun game where he kicks my cleaning rag across the floor so I have to crawl to get it. It keeps me limber. It keeps me young. It is like having a personal trainer right in my own kitchen." The silence in the yard was absolute now. The birds had stopped singing. The wind had died down. The only sound was the hum of the speakers and the heavy breathing of the woman standing behind me. This was not a joke anymore. The veneer was cracking. The guests were starting to see the monster beneath the makeup. Blake's smile had vanished. He stood frozen, his glass halfway to his mouth, his eyes wide with shock. He looked around, seeing the neighbors staring at him, seeing his boss, Mr. Henderson, frowning deeply. "But the best part," I said, my voice hardening, losing the folksy charm. "The best part is why we are here today. We are here because my family loves me so much they want to take this burden of a house off my hands. They want to protect me. They want to manage my assets because they think I am too old and too stupid to know what I am holding." I reached into my pocket and pulled out the crumpled piece of paper Glenda had given me, the script I was supposed to read. I held it up for everyone to see. "My wife wrote me a beautiful speech," I said, "but I think I will go off script. I think I will tell you the real reason Blake wants this house so badly." Glenda lunged for the microphone, desperation giving her speed. "No, stop him. He is having an episode. He is sick." I stiff-armed her, keeping her back with one hand while I held the mic with the other. I was not. Dustin, I was Duke, and I was done playing. I looked straight at Blake. I locked eyes with him across the 20 feet of manicured lawn. I let him see the predator. I let him see the man who had tightened the gas line. I let him see his doom. "Hey, Blake," I called out, my voice ringing like a bell. "You want to tell them? Or should I?" Blake dropped his glass. It shattered on the patio stones, the sound like a gunshot in the silence. "Tell them what?" he stammered, his face gray. "Tell them what this dirt is worth," I said, sweeping my hand across the horizon. "Tell Mr. Henderson here what you found out about the zoning commission. Tell them about the shopping mall. Tell them about the $4 million. The crowd gasped. It was a collective intake of breath that sucked the air out of the tent. $4 million. The number hung in the humid air, heavy and undeniable. "That is right, folks," I said, looking at the shocked faces of my neighbors. "This isn't a gift. This is a heist. My son-in-law and my wife aren't trying to secure my future. They are trying to steal a $4 million lottery ticket from a man they locked in a basement." Blake screamed. It was a primal sound of rage and terror. He realized the game was up. He realized his boss was watching. He realized his fortune was evaporating like mist. "Shut up!" he roared, charging toward the stage, his face twisted into a mask of violence. "You shut your mouth, you senile old bat!" The crowd parted, terrified. Blake rushed the stage, his fists clenched, ready to beat the truth back down my throat. Glenda was screaming. Ebony was frozen. I did not move. I did not flinch. I stood on the edge of the riser, the microphone in my hand like a gavel. "Come on, Blake," I whispered to myself. "Come and get it." And then the chaos began. Blake charged at me like a wounded bull seeing red. His face was contorted into a mask of pure, unadulterated violence. He was not thinking about the guests, or his boss, or the consequences. He was thinking about silencing the voice that was tearing his future apart. The crowd screamed and scattered, knocking over chairs and spilling champagne as he barreled toward the riser. He reached out his hands, hooked into claws, ready to tear the microphone from my grip, and maybe tear my throat out along with it. I did not move. I did not flinch. I watched him come with the cold detachment of a man who had seen real war. Blake was soft. Blake was slow. He was a bully who had never had to fight a man who fought back. Just as his hand closed around the air inches from my chest, a shadow moved from the side of the stage. It was the bodyguard Mercer had hired, a former linebacker with a neck as thick as a tree trunk. He stepped in front of me with deceptive speed. He did not strike Blake. He simply became a wall that Blake could not pass. Blake slammed into the bodyguard's chest with a sickening thud. The breath left his body in a whoosh. The bodyguard grabbed Blake by the lapels of his cheap suit and tossed him backward as if he were a rag doll. Blake landed hard on the grass, gasping for air, his expensive shoes scuffing the dirt. "Stay down." The bodyguard rumbled, his voice low and dangerous. Mercer stepped out from behind the tent flaps, holding a briefcase. He walked onto the stage and stood next to me, adjusting his glasses. He looked at the stunned crowd, then at the gasping man on the ground. "Ladies and gentlemen," Mercer said, his voice calm and authoritative, "please remain calm. We anticipated that Mr. Thomas might react poorly to the truth. That is why we have security." Blake scrambled to his feet, dirt staining the knees of his trousers. He looked wild. His hair was in his eyes. He pointed a shaking finger at me. "He is lying." Blake shrieked, his voice cracking. "He is senile. He does not know what he is talking about. That appraisal is fake. He forged it. Arrest him. Someone call the police." I looked down at him. I looked at the desperation in his eyes. He was drowning, and he was trying to pull everyone down with him. "You want the truth, Blake?" I asked into the microphone. "You want everyone to know exactly who you are?" I pulled my burner phone from my pocket. I tapped the screen, connecting it to the Bluetooth sound system that Glenda had rented for her speeches. The speakers popped and crackled. "I have a recording," I said to the crowd, "from last night, when Blake came home drunk and thought he was talking to a confused old man." I pressed play. The sound of Blake's voice filled the backyard, amplified to a deafening volume. It was slurred, arrogant, and undeniable. "It is not about you, Dustin. It is never about you. It is about the dirt. It is worth $4 million. The crowd gasped again. Mr. Henderson Blake's boss stepped forward, his face purple with rage. He recognized the voice. He recognized the deal. He realized his employee was trying to cut a side deal on a company project. The recording continued. "Ebony does not know anything. She thinks we are broke. She is a useful idiot, Dustin, just like her mother." I looked at Ebony. She was standing near the cake table, her hands over her mouth. Her eyes were wide, fixed on Blake. She looked like she had been slapped. The voice on the speakers laughed a cruel sound. "The second that money hits my account, I am gone. I filed the divorce papers 3 weeks ago. I am taking my half and I am moving to Costa Rica. I am done with her. I am done with her whining." Ebony let out a sound that was half sob, half scream, and then the final nail in the coffin. "Glenda knows. We have a deal. She helps me get you to sign the house over, and I give her $1 million. She hates you just as much as I do." I stopped the recording. The silence that followed was heavy, suffocating. It was the silence of a tomb. I looked at Glenda. She was frozen. She was staring at the ground, unable to look at anyone. Her hands were shaking so hard the champagne glass she was holding slipped from her fingers and shattered on the riser, but no one reacted to the sound. They were too busy processing the betrayal. Then I played the second file. This one was from the clinic. The voice was Glenda's, shrill and demanding. "Just give him the cocktail, doctor. Make him drool. We need him incapacitated so we can get power of attorney. We cannot wait for him to die naturally. We need that money now." The crowd murmured a low, angry sound like a hive of bees disturbed. They looked at Glenda with disgust. The saintly wife, the devoted partner, exposed as a monster who wanted to chemically lobotomize her husband for a payday. I put the phone away. I looked at the family that had tried to destroy my brother. They were broken. They were exposed. They were finished. Blake looked around frantically, searching for an ally, searching for an exit. But there was nowhere to go. The neighbors had formed a ring around the yard, their faces hard. Mr. Henderson was on his phone, likely firing Blake at that very moment. Then the explosion happened. Ebony moved. She did not run away. She did not collapse. She launched herself at Blake. "You bastard," she screamed. She hit him with the force of a hurricane. Her nails raked down his face, leaving bright red lines. She grabbed his hair and pulled screaming obscenities that would make a sailor blush. "You called me an idiot," she shrieked, slapping him. "You were going to leave me. You were going to steal my money." Blake tried to push her off, but she was fueled by pure rage. She kicked him in the shins. She tore his jacket. "Get off me, you crazy witch," Blake yelled, trying to shield his face. The guests pulled out their phones. The flashes went off like strobes. They were live streaming the brawl. The downfall of the Robinson family was being broadcast to the world in high definition. Glenda finally moved. She stepped toward me, her hands reaching out, imploring. "Dustin, please," she begged, her voice a broken whisper. "Turn it off. Stop them. Tell them it is a lie. Tell them you made it up." I looked at her. I looked at the woman who had thrown a dirty rag in my face just days ago. I looked at the woman who had fed me leftovers while she ate steak. I saw no regret in her eyes, only fear. Fear of losing her status. Fear of losing her money. "I cannot do that, Glenda," I said. "Because I do not lie." She grabbed my lapel, trying to shake me. "You have to," she hissed, her face twisting into a snarl. "You are my husband. You owe me. I took care of you. I put a roof over your head. You put me in a basement," I said, pushing her hand away. "You treated me like a dog." Ebony and Blake were rolling on the grass now, a tangle of limbs and accusations. The bodyguard stepped in, pulling them apart with ease. He held Blake back by his collar while Ebony stood there, chest heaving, her hair wild, pointing a shaking finger at her husband. "I will kill you," she screamed. "I will take everything." I tapped the microphone again, drawing the attention back to the stage. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said, my voice cutting through the chaos, "I think you have seen enough. You have seen the truth. You have seen the greed. And you have seen the hate that lives in this house." I picked up the deed, the document they had tried to force me to sign. I held it up. "This paper represents everything they wanted," I said. "It represents their greed. It represents their betrayal." I ripped the paper in half. The sound was loud, crisp. I ripped it again and again until it was nothing but confetti. I threw the pieces into the air. They drifted down around Glenda, landing in her hair, landing on her shoulders like the ashes of her burnt bridges. "I am not signing anything," I said. Glenda stared at the pieces of paper, tears streaming down her face. "Dustin, why?" she sobbed. "Why are you doing this?" I reached up to my face. I grabbed the glasses, the wire-rimmed spectacles that Dustin had worn for 20 years. I took them off. I dropped them on the floor and crushed them under the heel of my Oxford shoe. I stood up straight. I rolled my shoulders back, shedding the slump of the beaten man. I lifted my chin. I let the cold, hard gaze of the contractor, the survivor, the soldier, come to the surface. My voice changed. It dropped the tremor. It dropped the hesitation. It became the voice of command. "I am not signing anything," I said, my voice booming without the microphone, "because this is not my house." I looked at Blake, who was wiping blood from his cheek. I looked at Ebony, who was fixing her dress. I looked at Glenda. "And I am not Dustin Robinson." A gasp went through the crowd. Glenda took a step back, her eyes widening in confusion. What, she whispered. "What are you talking about? You are Dustin." "No," I said. "Dustin is a good man. Dustin is a kind man. Dustin would never have done this to you. Dustin would have forgiven you." I took a step toward her. "I am Duke Robinson. I am his brother, and I am the one who came back to burn your kingdom to the ground." I pointed toward the side gate, the one that led to the alley. "And that," I said, "is Dustin." The gate swung open. A figure stepped out of the shadows. He was wearing a blue suit. His hair was cut short. He looked like me, but his eyes were kind. His eyes were sad. It was my brother, and he was finally home. The heavy wooden gate swung open slowly, the rusty hinges groaning in the humid evening air. All eyes turned toward the sound. 50 guests stood, frozen champagne glasses halfway to their mouths, watching as a figure emerged from the shadows of the alley. It was Dustin. But it was not the Dustin they knew. He was not wearing his stained overalls or his worn-out flannel. He was wearing a sharp navy blue Italian suit that fit him perfectly. His hair was freshly cut, his beard trimmed to a neat goatee. His skin, usually pale and drawn from living in a basement, was glowing with the health of a week spent in luxury and peace. He walked with a steady, confident stride, his head held high. He looked like a man who had reclaimed his soul. The silence in the backyard was absolute. It was as if the world had stopped spinning. Glenda stared at him, her mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. She looked from me to him, then back to me, her brain trying to process the impossible reality of two Dustins standing before her. Blake, who was still on the ground wiping blood from his lip, looked like he had seen a ghost. Ebony stopped fixing her dress and stared, her eyes wide with confusion and fear. Dustin walked past the stunned guests. He did not look at the ground. He looked straight ahead, his eyes locked on the stage where his family was self-destructing. He walked up the steps of the riser and stood next to me. We stood shoulder to shoulder, identical in face, but different in spirit. The warrior and the survivor, the sword and the shield. The resemblance was uncanny, terrifying even. The only difference was the cold, hard set of my jaw compared to the quiet sadness in his eyes. Dustin, Glenda whispered, her voice cracking. Is that really you?" Dustin looked at her. He looked at the woman who had promised to love him in sickness and in health and had instead locked him in a dungeon. He looked at the woman who had fed him scraps while she feasted. He looked at the woman who had planned to steal his life. "Hello, Glenda," he said softly. His voice was calm, but there was a steel undercurrent I had never heard before. Glenda let out a sob. It was a theatrical, desperate sound. She realized the game was up. She realized her power was broken. She did the only thing she knew how to do. She played the victim. She threw herself at his feet, clutching his pant legs, her tears soaking the expensive fabric of his suit. "Oh, Dustin," she wailed. "Thank God you are here. It was awful, Blake. He made me do it. He threatened me. He said he would hurt me if I didn't help him. I didn't want to. I love you, Dustin. I only wanted to protect you." I watched her with disgust. It was a performance worthy of an Oscar, but the audience had already seen the script. Dustin looked down at her. He did not reach down to help her up. He did not pat her head. He did not offer comfort. He just stood there, unmoving as a statue. "Get up, Glenda," he said. "But Dustin." "You have to believe me," she cried, clinging tighter. "I am your wife. We have been together for 30 years. Don't let your brother ruin us. He is evil. He tricked us." Dustin reached into his jacket pocket. He pulled out a folded document. It was not a deed. It was a petition for divorce. He bent down, peeled her fingers off his leg one by one, and stepped back. Glenda fell forward onto the riser, her face pressing against the wood. "I am not ruining us, Glenda," Dustin said, his voice gaining strength. "You ruined us. You ruined us the day you decided my life was worth less than a shopping mall. You ruined us the day you let our daughter treat me like a servant. You ruined us every time you ate steak while I ate bones." Glenda looked up, her mascara running down her cheeks in black streaks. "But I love you." Dustin shook his head slowly. A sad smile touched his lips. "No, Glenda," he said. "You do not love me. You love my obedience. You love my silence. You love the fact that I never said no. You love the servant, not the man." He dropped the divorce papers on the floor next to her. "Well, the servant is dead," he said. "He died in that basement. The man standing here, he is done serving you." Glenda stared at the papers, her hands trembling. She looked at Blake, who was still on the ground, defeated. She looked at Ebony, who was backing away, trying to disappear into the crowd. She realized she was alone. Completely and utterly alone. Blake started to laugh. It was a jagged, broken sound. "So what?" he sneered, struggling to his feet. "So you are leaving. Big deal. You still can't prove anything. The recordings are inadmissible. It is hearsay. You can't touch us. We will fight this. We will tie you up in court for years. You will never see a dime of that $4 million. Mercer stepped forward again, checking his watch. "Actually," Mr. Thomas Mercer said calmly, "that is not entirely accurate. You see, while Duke here was entertaining your guests, I was busy making a few phone calls, specifically to the district attorney's office." Blake froze. "The DA, yes," Mercer continued. "We sent them the recordings this morning, along with the photos of the gas line tampering and the financial records of your embezzlement. In this state, one-party consent for recording applies when there is a reasonable suspicion of a felony in progress and conspiracy to commit murder." Well, that is definitely a felony. Sirens wailed in the distance, getting louder every second. Blue lights began to flash against the trees in the front yard. Blake's face went white. He looked toward the gate toward the alley, looking for an escape route. "Don't even think about it," the bodyguard growled, stepping into his path. Police officers swarmed into the backyard, their radios crackling. They were led by a stern-faced detective who walked straight up to the stage. "Blake Thomas," the detective asked. Blake nodded dumbly. "You are under arrest for attempted murder, financial fraud, and elder abuse," the detective said, pulling out handcuffs. Blake tried to run. He made a desperate lunge for the fence, but the bodyguard tripped him effortlessly. He face-planted into the grass. Two officers were on him in seconds, dragging his arms behind his back and clicking the cuffs into place. "I didn't do it!" Blake screamed as they hauled him up. It was the old man. "He set me up." "Glenda, tell them it was your idea." Glenda scrambled backward, shaking her head frantically. "No, he is lying. He forced me. I am a victim." "Mrs. Robinson," the detective said, turning to her, "we have a warrant for your arrest as well. Conspiracy to commit fraud and elder abuse. Please place your hands behind your back." Glenda screamed. It was a high, thin sound of pure terror. "No, you can't. I am a pillar of this community. I am a church-going woman." An officer stepped onto the stage and gently but firmly turned her around, cuffing her wrists. She looked at Dustin, her eyes pleading. "Dustin, please, tell them. Tell them I took care of you." Dustin looked at her one last time. He looked at the woman who had stolen 30 years of his life. "You took care of me all right," he said quietly. "You took care of me until there was almost nothing left. Goodbye, Glenda." They led her away, weeping and wailing, her heels dragging in the grass. Ebony stood by the cake table, frozen. The detective walked over to her. "Ms. Robinson," he asked. She nodded, tears streaming down her face. "You are not under arrest at this time," the detective said, "but we will need you to come to the station for questioning. Your involvement in the financial exploitation is significant." Ebony looked at me. Then she looked at Dustin. "Daddy," she whispered, "help me." Dustin looked at his daughter, the girl he had sold his truck for, the girl who had tried to cut a side deal to steal his house. He walked over to her. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a $20 bill, the same amount Glenda used to give him for a monthly allowance. He handed it to her. "Here," he said, "for the cab." He turned his back on her and walked away. The party was over. The guests were dispersing, whispering, shaking their heads. The police were putting Blake and Glenda into the back of cruisers. I walked up to Dustin. I put my hand on his shoulder. "You did good, brother," I said. He looked at me. His eyes were wet, but he was smiling, a real smile. I learned from the best he said. We stood there in the fading light, two brothers identical in face, finally united in spirit. The nightmare was over. The house was empty. And the future was wide open. The gavel fell with a sound that echoed like a gunshot in the quiet courtroom. It was the sound of finality, the sound of a door slamming shut on a 30-year nightmare. I sat in the front row of the gallery wearing my charcoal suit, my hands resting calmly on my knees. I watched the judge, a stern woman who had seen enough greed to last a lifetime, deliver her verdict. She did not mince words. She called their actions depraved. She called them predatory. And then she delivered the punishment. Blake stood at the defense table, his orange jumpsuit hanging loosely on his frame. He had lost 20 pounds in the 3 months he had spent in county jail awaiting trial. His arrogance was gone, replaced by a twitchy, desperate fear. When the judge announced the sentence, 10 years in a federal penitentiary without the possibility of parole, he let out a sound that was half sob, half whimper. He looked back at the gallery, his eyes scanning the faces for someone, anyone who might save him. He looked at his former boss, Mr. Henderson, who sat stone-faced 2 rows behind me. He looked at Ebony, who was not even there, and then he looked at me. I held his gaze. I did not smile. I did not gloat. I just looked at him with the cold indifference of a man watching a bug get stepped on. He had tried to kill my brother for money. He had tried to kill me. He deserved every day of those 10 years. As the marshals grabbed his arms to lead him away, he slumped his legs, giving out. They dragged him through the side door, his feet scraping against the floor. That was the last time Blake Thomas would walk as a free man for a decade. Glenda fared no better, though her prison was different. She had taken a plea deal testifying against Blake to avoid a lengthy jail sentence. She got probation, but the civil courts destroyed her. Mercer had been ruthless. He proved she was a co-conspirator in the fraud and the abuse. The judge awarded her nothing in the divorce. No alimony, no pension, no share of the house sale. She walked out of that marriage with the clothes on her back and a suitcase full of bitterness. I drove by her new address a week ago just to see it for myself. She lives in a basement apartment on the south side of the city now. It is a damp, dark little place with bars on the windows and a view of a dumpster. The irony was so thick I could taste it. She had forced Dustin to live in a basement for 5 years, and now she would spend her twilight years in one. I saw her walking to the bus stop wearing a faded coat, looking 20 years older than she had at the party. She works as a night cleaner at an office building downtown. She scrubs floors. She empties trash cans. She cleans up after people who do not even know her name. The church ladies she used to gossip with have shunned her. Her social standing is gone. She is alone, a ghost haunting the ruins of her own greed. And then there is Ebony, my dear niece. She was not arrested, but her sentence is perhaps the most humiliating. The video of her attacking Blake at the party went viral. It was viewed millions of times. The comments were brutal. Her friends, the social climbers she tried so hard to impress, dropped her immediately. She was fired from her job at the boutique. She's been blacklisted from every decent establishment in Atlanta. She works at a diner off the interstate, now serving truck drivers and tourists who do not know who she is. I stopped there on my way out of town. I sat in a booth in the back and watched her. She looked tired. Her hair was messy, her apron stained with grease. A customer yelled at her for bringing him cold coffee, and she just took it. She apologized, her head lowered. The entitlement was beaten out of her, replaced by the crushing weight of minimum wage and debt. She owes thousands in legal fees and credit card bills. She lives in a studio apartment with 2 roommates she despises. She saw me as I was leaving. She stopped holding a coffee pot, her eyes widening with a mix of shame and hope. She took a step toward me, maybe to ask for money, maybe to ask for forgiveness. I did not wait to find out. I left a $20 bill on the table and walked out the door. That was the last money she would ever see from a Robinson. Dustin sold the land 2 weeks after the party. The developers did not care about the scandal, they just wanted the dirt. They paid $4.5 million. The check cleared the next day. $4.5 million. It is a number that changes things. It is a number that buys freedom. Dustin did not buy a mansion. He did not buy a yacht. He did not try to buy his way back into a society that had rejected him. He did exactly what he said he would do when we were boys dreaming in our shared bedroom. He went to a luxury RV dealership. He bought a 40-foot coach, a rolling palace with leather seats, a king-sized bed, and a kitchen nicer than the one in his old house. He bought a brand-new heavy-duty truck to tow it. He bought a high-end camera. I helped him pack. It did not take long. He left everything from his old life behind. The furniture, the clothes, the bad memories. He left it all in the house for the bulldozers. We stood in the driveway one last time. The house looked small, now empty and dead. The for sale sign was gone, replaced by a demolition notice. "You okay, brother?" I asked him. He looked at the house, then he looked at the massive RV gleaming in the sun. "I am better than okay, Duke," he said, his voice strong. "I am free." He hugged me. It was a fierce, bone-crushing hug, the kind of hug that says more than words ever could. "Thank you," he whispered. "You gave me my life back." "You took it back," I corrected him, pulling away. "I just gave you the hammer." He climbed into the cab of the truck. He started the engine. It roared to life, a powerful sound of possibilities. He rolled down the window and smiled, a genuine smile that reached his eyes and erased years of pain. "I am going to see the ocean," he said, "and then I am going to see the mountains. And then who knows? Maybe I will just keep driving." "Send pictures," I said. He drove away, pulling his new home behind him. I watched him go until he turned the corner and disappeared. Dustin Robinson, the man who lived in a basement, was gone. Dustin Robinson, the millionaire traveler, had just begun his journey. I drove back to Chicago the next day. The drive felt shorter this time. The weight in my chest was gone, replaced by a profound sense of peace. I returned the rental car. I put the charcoal suit in the back of my closet. I shaved my beard back into my signature goatee. I became Duke again. But I was different too. I had remembered something I had forgotten in my years of chasing contracts and money. I remembered that family is not just blood. It is loyalty. It is showing up when the call comes. It is fighting for the ones who cannot fight for themselves. It is a Tuesday evening now, 3 months later. The Chicago sky is that perfect steel gray again. I am sitting on the deck of my lake house, a glass of the vintage Bordeaux in my hand. The same wine I drank the night I exposed Blake. The lake is calm, the water lapping gently against the dock. It is quiet, peaceful. My phone buzzes on the table. I pick it up. It is a message from Dustin. I open it. It is a picture. He is standing on the edge of the Grand Canyon. The vast red expanse stretches out behind him, a majestic scar in the earth. The sun is setting, painting the sky in shades of purple and orange. Dustin is wearing a hiking hat and sunglasses. He is holding a walking stick, and he is smiling. It is the biggest, brightest smile I have ever seen on his face. He looks 10 years younger. He looks strong. He looks happy. Under the picture, he wrote a simple caption. "The view is better from here." I laugh. A deep, rich sound that startles a seagull nearby. I type back, "Enjoy the view, brother. You earned it." I put the phone down. I take a sip of the wine. It tastes like victory. It tastes like justice. The world is full of predators, people like Blake and Glenda who see kindness as weakness and love as a transaction. They think they can take what they want. They think they can break people without consequences. But they forget one thing. Even the gentlest soul has a breaking point. And sometimes that gentle soul has a brother who is not gentle at all. I look out at the water. I raise my glass to the empty air. To the switch I whisper, and then I drink. The sun sets over the lake. The air gets cold. But I do not feel it. I am warm. I am content. My brother is free. The bad guys are in jail, and I am back to my fishing. But I keep the phone close, just in case. Because you never know when family might call, and next time I will be ready. If you enjoyed this story of justice and brotherhood, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Let me know in the comments if you would have done what I did. Until next time, stay safe and watch your back. We often believe that family signifies unconditional loyalty, yet sometimes those sharing our blood are the first to bleed us dry. My brother Dustin mistook his silence for love, unwittingly fueling their greed. The most profound lesson here is that we teach others how to treat us. If you accept being a doormat, do not be surprised when they wipe their dirty feet on you. However, remember this, it is never too late to reclaim your dignity. Sometimes you might need help finding your voice, but once you do, ensure it roars loud enough to shatter the world of those who tried to bury you. If this story of justice satisfied you, please hit the like button and subscribe for more. Let me know in the comments, would you have gone to such lengths to save your sibling? Until next time.